Hey guys, tonight we are venturing into a world of immense power and profound sorrow. A place hidden behind silk screens and silent corridors. We're going to explore one of history's most jarring paradoxes, the lives of palace eunuchs. These were the men who were denied the most fundamental aspects of their own manhood, only to be placed at the very epicenter of the emperor's hypersensual world. It's a journey into a gilded cage, where survival depended not on strength, but on becoming a ghost. It's a heavy topic, I know, but we're going to handle it with the care it deserves, focusing on the human story beneath the palace intrigue. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It truly helps the channel find others who appreciate these quiet, late-night explorations. And as always, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop me a comment with your city and what time it is for you. It makes this feel a little less like me talking to a microphone and more like us sharing a story. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The journey doesn't begin in the shimmering gold and deep vermilion of the Forbidden City. It begins with you, in the mud. You are maybe 7, perhaps 8 years old. Age is a blurry thing here, marked by harvests, not birthdays. Your world is a small village of packed earth walls and thatched roofs that weep brown tears when it rains. The air smells of damp soil, cooking fires, and a quiet, gnawing hunger. You are lying on a straw mat, the thin fabric of your tunic doing little to soften the hard-packed floor. Outside, the wind whistles a mournful tune through the barren fields. This year, the rains didn't come, and the millet stalks stand brittle and empty. Your stomach is a hollow cavern, echoing with the memory of the last meager meal. You can hear your parents whispering in the other room. Their voices are like the rustling of dry leaves, brittle, anxious, and sad. You don't understand all their words, but you understand the tone. It's the same tone that has haunted the village for months. Desperation. Your father's voice is low and gravelly. He speaks of the tax collector, a man who takes grain whether you have it or not. He speaks of the coming winter, a white wolf that will stalk the weakest. He speaks of your older sister, already promised to a neighboring family for a handful of silver and 2 bags of rice, a transaction that felt less like a wedding and more like a sale. Now, their whispers coil around a new word. A place, the capital. And then they talk about you. One afternoon, your father sits with you. He doesn't look at you, but at his own calloused hands that have spent a lifetime pleading with the earth for sustenance. He tells you a story. Not a fun one with dragons and spirits, but a serious one. He tells you that some boys are chosen for a special destiny. A life of service to the Son of Heaven, the Emperor himself. He talks of a place where you will never be hungry again. You will wear silk robes, eat food you cannot even imagine, and live within walls of legendary beauty. You will be safe, he says. Your family will be safe, he says, because of you. This is the central, undeniable fact of your new path. It is almost never a choice born of personal ambition, but of crushing, inescapable poverty. For countless families on the brink of starvation, offering a son to the palace was a last, desperate gamble. It was a trade a child's future in exchange for the survival of the rest of the family. Your father explains that there will be a great sacrifice. A passage. He uses vague, soft words to describe a brutal reality. He tells you that to serve in the inner sanctum of the palace, among the emperor's wives and concubines, a man cannot be a complete man. It is a rule to protect the purity of the imperial bloodline. You're not really understanding the mechanics of it, but understanding the weight. You are being asked to give up a part of yourself you don't even know you have yet. He doesn't mention the Dorsai Jong, the specialist cutter who performs the procedure. This isn't a surgeon in a clean room, it's a profession passed down through families. A grim and secretive trade, what's even stranger, and a detail often lost in the grand sweep of history, is the almost contractual nature of this moment. Your parents will sign a document, a contract of indenture, effectively signing your life away. It states they are doing this willingly and will not hold the palace responsible for any accidents. The mortality rate from the procedure and subsequent infection was terrifyingly high. You look at your mother. Her eyes are red-rimmed, but she forces a small, watery smile. She packs a small bundle for you, a spare tunic and a single, hardened rice cake for the journey. This is where historians still argue. Was this act viewed universally as a family tragedy, a heart-wrenching loss, or did a sliver of ambition creep in for some? There was a strange honor to it. Having a son in the palace, no matter his position, was a connection to power. A potential lifeline that could pull the entire family from the mud. The line between desperation and a calculated hope for future glory was, and remains, incredibly blurry. The day you leave, the entire village is quiet. You are no longer just a boy, you are a sacrifice, a tribute. You climb onto the back of a rickety cart, beside two other boys with the same wide, terrified eyes as you. You don't look back. You're afraid if you do, you'll see your mother finally break. And you don't think your small heart can bear it. The cart lurches forward, and with every jolt, you are leaving your world behind, heading toward the gilded cage and the knife that will sever you from your past, your future, and yourself. The journey to the capital is a dusty, rattling glare. The rhythmic clatter of the cart's wheels on the rutted road becomes the new pulse of your life. The world you knew, the tiny village of mud walls, shrinks behind you until it's just a memory. You sit huddled with the other boys, a silent brotherhood of fear. You don't speak of what's to come. You can't. The reality is too big, too sharp to be shaped into words. Instead, you talk about small things: the taste of a stolen persimmon, the feel of a dog's fur, the way the river looks at sunset. You are clinging to a world that is already gone. Finally, you arrive, not at the palace, not yet. You are taken to a small, unassuming building in a grimy alley on the outskirts of the sprawling capital. This place has a name, though it's spoken only in whispers: the Jing Fang, the Chamber of Purification. It smells of medicinal herbs, stale incense, and something else, something metallic and sharp that makes the back of your throat tighten. This is the workshop of the Daozai Zhong. The man you now know is called the Knife Art. You are led into a small, windowless room. The air is thick and still. In the center of the room is a low wooden bench. Your heart, which had been a frantic drum, now feels like a cold stone in your chest. The Knife Art is an old man, his face a mask of wrinkles, his hands surprisingly steady. He moves with a calm, practiced efficiency that is somehow more terrifying than any overt cruelty would be. He has done this thousands of times. To him, you are not a child. You are a task. Here, the procedure becomes a chillingly formal affair. This is a cold comfort, but a fascinating historical detail. The process was often ritualized, as if to give a veneer of spiritual significance to an act of profound physical violence. You are made to drink a special tea, a bitter concoction of herbs meant to numb you, though its effectiveness is a matter of pure luck. You are then asked the question, the final confirmation: do you repent of this? It's a strange, almost mocking question. Repent. You are 8 years old. Repent of what? Being born poor, but you know the answer you must give. You whisper, I do not repent. Your voice is a thread. The Knife Art nods. The contract is binding. Your clothes are removed. You are laid down. Your limbs are bound to the bench with silk cords, a touch of palace refinement in this house of pain. They bind you tightly, not out of malice, but out of a grim practicality. A single flinch at the wrong moment could be fatal. You stare at the ceiling, at the water stains that look like angry gods, and you try to go somewhere else in your mind. You think of the river back home, the cool water rushing over your feet. The Knife Art's assistant, a younger man with empty eyes, begins to chant. It's a low, droning sound, meant to be calming, but it only heightens the surreal horror of the moment. He washes you with hot pepper water. The stinging sensation is a prelude, a cruel opening act. It's meant to sterilize the area, a rudimentary and agonizing form of antiseptic. Then you see it, the knife. It's not a grand, ceremonial blade. It is small, curved thing, like a crescent moon, sharpened to a razor's edge. This is where we must confront the brutal reality. What was known as Quan Ge, the clean cut. There were different types of castration in history, but for palace eunuchs in Imperial China, the standard was the most extreme, the removal of everything, the entire apparatus. It was done for a simple, chilling reason, to leave absolutely no possibility, no vestige of manhood that could ever pose a threat to the imperial bloodline. The knife art works with a speed born of immense experience. There is a single, swift, scoping motion. The pain is a white-hot supernova. It is beyond screaming, beyond thought. It is a soundless, internal explosion that rips your universe apart. You'll feel a sudden, shocking lightness, a hollow wish that is both physical and existential. It's over in seconds, but those seconds will stretch for the rest of your life. The wound is immediately covered with paper soaked in cool water and pressed down. Then, ashes are applied to help stanch the bleeding, and act as another crude form of disinfectant. A small pewter plug, sometimes called a quill, is inserted into your urethra to prevent it from closing as it heals. The bindings are cut. You are now, officially, in between. No longer the boy you were, not yet the servant you will become. This is a point of intense debate among historians who study the intimate lives of the court. What was the immediate psychological impact of this moment? We have clinical descriptions of the procedure, but the personal, internal experience is lost to silence. Did you feel a sense of release? That the worst was over, or was it the beginning of a new kind of terror? The terror of what you had just lost, we can only speculate, piecing together fragments from poetry and resentful accounts written by the court officials who despised the eunuchs. They often described the eunuchs as being filled with a dark vapor, a yin energy, something fundamentally unbalanced and unnatural, stemming directly from this foundational moment of mutilation. The Naifaris assistant gathers what was removed. He carefully places it in a small earthen jar. This jar and its contents are called your bow, your treasure. It will be sealed and stored. It is, perversely, the most important possession you will ever own. Without it, you cannot be promoted, and without it, when you die, you cannot be buried as a whole man, forever damning your spirit in the afterlife. It's a piece of you, held hostage for your entire life, a constant reminder of what you paid to enter the palace walls. You are helped off the bench, your legs trembling and useless. The world swims in a grey haze. You have crossed the threshold. There is no going back. The world shrinks to the size of a single, small, dark room. The supernova of pain has faded to a dull, throbbing universe of agony. This is the beginning of the 100 days. The critical recovery period where you will either heal or you will not. The odds are not in your favor. Infection is the silent hunter in this room, and your small, traumatized body is the perfect prey. You are laid on a cot, propped up at a slight angle. Two assistants, apprentices to the Naifal, are now your keepers. Their job is not to comfort you, but to keep you alive. For the first 3 days, you are not allowed to drink a single drop of water. This is the cruelest part of the recovery. The dehydration is a torment all its own, a constant, rasping thirst that feels like swallowing sand. Your lips crack. Your tongue feels thick and useless in your mouth. This practice, while sounding like pure torture, was based on a grimly practical observation. Minimizing urination reduced the risk of urine contaminating the open wound, which was almost a certain death sentence. Your entire existence is focused on the pewter plug that was inserted. It's a foreign object, a source of constant, low-grade pain, but it is your lifeline. If your urethra swells shut around it, you will die. The assistants check it constantly. Their touch is not gentle, it is functional, detached. You are a project, a piece of work in progress. On the 4th day, They give you water. It is the most exquisite thing you have ever tasted. It's just a small cup of thin, watery broth, but it feels like a gift from the gods. And then comes the next ordeal, the removal of the plug. It is a moment of pure terror. Everyone knows this is the great test. The assistants hold you down, and, with a swift, painful pull, the plug is removed. You have to urinate. If you can, you live. If you cannot, the passage is closed. And your journey ends here, in this squalid room. Unceremoniously, you feel a tentative, stinging trickle. It is a fiery pain, but it is also a signal of life. You have passed the first gate. During these weeks, you are not alone. There are other boys in the room, all in various states of recovery. Some moan softly in their sleep, some lie there being still. One morning, you wake up and the cot next to you is empty. No one says a word. The boy is just gone. You learn not to ask questions. The silence teaches you one of the first lessons of the palace: some things are better left unseen, unsaid, and unremembered. This period is when the physical changes begin to set in, marking you forever. Without the production of testosterone, your body will now develop along a different path. Your voice, which might have one day deepened into a man's baritone, will remain high, clear, and boyish for the rest of your life. This sound, the eunuch's voice, would become a signature, instantly identifying you within the palace walls. A lesser known, but life-altering consequence begins to manifest incontinence. The complex network of muscles that control urination is often permanently damaged during the procedure. For the rest of your life, you will struggle with leakage. This created a constant, low-level shame and a practical problem. Many eunuchs carried small towels with them at all times and had to change their undergarments frequently. The faint, telltale scent of stale urine was a sad reality that clung to many. A secret humiliation hidden beneath layers of soap. It's a deeply personal, undignified detail that history books rarely mention. But it was a central part of your daily reality. As you heal, your body also begins to change shape. You won't develop strong, angular muscles. Instead, your frame will remain softer, more rounded. As you age, you might gain weight easily, especially around the hips and chest. Your facial hair will never grow. Your skin will remain smooth, almost porcelain-like. You are being molded, physically, into a third gender, a being designed for a specific role within the palace ecosystem, visibly unthreatening, eternally juvenile. Historians have long debated the long-term health consequences beyond the obvious. Did the lack of hormones lead to other issues like early osteoporosis? Did it affect their emotional regulation? The written record, mostly penned by hostile scholars, focuses on their perceived moral failings: greed, cruelty, ambition, often attributing them to their unnatural state. These accounts claim that the eunuchs' minds were as mutilated as their bodies. It's a classic example of biased historical reporting. It's far more likely that the psychological toll of the trauma, the chronic pain, the social ostracism, and the high-stakes political environment of the court were the primary drivers of their behavior, not some inherent evil born from the cut. Slowly, you begin to walk again. Your steps are a shuffling, careful gait, a way of moving that you will retain for the rest of your days to minimize discomfort. The knife and his assistant start teaching you the basics of palace etiquette: how to bow, how to speak without making eye contact, how to be present but invisible. You are being rebuilt, piece by piece. The boy from the village is being sanded away, polished into a smooth, unobtrusive tool. One day, an official from the palace arrives. He is dressed in magnificent silks, a stark contrast to the grimness of your recovery room. He inspects you and the other survivors as if you were livestock. He checks your wound, listens to your high-pitched voice when you answer his questions, and nods. You have been deemed acceptable. You have survived the 100 days. You have been reborn. He hands you a small, plain robe. It's time to leave the chamber of purification and enter the place you have sacrificed everything for. It's time to see the Forbidden City. The transition from the grimy alley of the Fang to the grandeur of the Forbidden City is a shock to your system. It's like stepping from a world of charcoal grey directly into a painter's vibrant palette. The cart you ride in passes through a series of towering gates, each one more imposing than the last. The sheer scale of it all is designed to make you feel small, insignificant. And it works. You catch your first glimpse of the iconic yellow-tiled roofs, shimmering under the sun like a sea of liquid gold. Yellow, you learn instantly, is the color of the Emperor. Only he can use it so freely. The walls are a deep, imperial red, punctuated by enormous gates studded with golden knobs. Everything is vast, symmetrical, and perfectly ordered. The ground beneath your feet is no longer dirt, but immense flagstones, polished smooth by centuries of silent, hurrying feet. The air itself is different here. It's heavy with the scent of ancient cypress trees, blooming peonies, and the faint, sweet smell of incense wafting from unseen temples. But beneath it all, there's a coldness. The beauty is intimidating, a decoration of power so immense it feels less like a home and more like a statement. This is not a place of comfort, it is the center of the universe. You and the other new boys are led by a stern, older eunuch. He doesn't look at you. He glides more than he walks, his silk slippers making no sound on the stone. He is your shifu, your master or teacher, and his job is to turn you from a raw, terrified survivor into a functioning part of the palace machine. Your first stop is a low-slung series of buildings in a forgotten corner of the vast complex. This will be your home, your barracks. It is starkly different from the opulence you just witnessed. The rooms are small, crowded, and bare. You share a sleeping platform, a king, with a dozen other boys. The hierarchy is immediate and brutal. The older boys, those who have been here a year or two, take the best spot. They get the extra blankets. They speak with a casual cruelty that you quickly learn not to challenge. You are at the very bottom of a very tall, very slippery ladder. Your shifu gathers you in a courtyard. Forget your names, he says, his high-pitched voice cutting through the air. Forget your families. Forget the sun and the moon as you knew them. From this day forward, your world is contained within these walls. The Emperor is your father and your God. His will is your only purpose. The first lesson is about rules. There are thousands of them. Rules about how to walk, how to stand, how to pour tea, how to hold a lantern. Rules about which staircases you can use, which doors you can enter, and which courtyards you are forbidden from even looking at. You learn to speak in a specific, differential manner, always using the proper honorificus. You learn to walk with your head bowed, your eyes fixed on a spot 3 feet in front of you, making eye contact with the superior. Or worse, a member of the Imperial family, is a grave offense. You are learning to erase yourself. One of the most curious and surprisingly important parts of your early training involves something mundane: your sense of smell. You are taught to be meticulously clean, to wash constantly, not just for hygiene but to eliminate any personal scent. The goal is to be odorless, a blank slate. Conversely, you must develop an encyclopedic knowledge of perfumes, incenses, and nectars. This is because you will eventually serve the women of the inner court, and their world is one of scents. You must know which concubine prefers jasmine, which one favors sandalwood, and which imperial consort has a penchant for rare orchid oil from the south. A mistake in this olfactory world could be interpreted as a slight, a sign of inattention, with dire consequences. It's a strange, invisible language that you must master. Historians are still piecing together the daily curriculum for a novice eunuch, as it wasn't formally documented in the same way as, say, a scholar's education. Much of what we know comes from anecdotal accounts and court records detailing punishments, which indirectly tell us what the rules were. It seems the training was less about academic, literate, or semi-literate and more about a form of behavioral conditioning. You were being trained like a high-stakes service animal. Your instincts honed for obedience and observation. The concept of unquestioning obedience was hammered into you through endless repetition and the constant threat of punishment. The punishments are swift and severe. A dropped ball might turn you a beating with a bamboo rod. A forgotten rule could mean kneeling on jagged stones for hours. You see an older boy, barely a teenager, being dragged away for speaking out of turn. You never see him again. The fear is a constant companion. A cold knot in your stomach that never fully dissolves. You are assigned menial tasks, sweeping courtyards that are already immaculate, polishing brass ornaments until they blind you, trimming the wicks of 1,000 lanterns. It is grueling, monotonous work, designed to break your will and instill discipline. But as you work, you watch. You watch the older eunuchs, how they move, how they anticipate the needs of their masters. You see how a well-timed word or a discreetly delivered message can earn a small favor. You see how a rival is subtly undermined. In this sea of red walls and golden roofs, you are utterly alone. The other boys are not your friends, they are your competitors. You are all vying for the same thing, a better assignment. The goal is to get out of these barracks and be assigned to a specific palace, a particular master. That is where the path to influence, comfort, and even power begins. But for now, you are nobody, a shadow in training, learning the geography of a world where a single misstep could mean you disappear without a trace. The palace is beautiful, but its beauty is the cold, sharp beauty of a perfectly crafted weapon, and you are standing on the wrong end of it. Weeks blur into months. The initial shock of the palace's grandeur has worn off, replaced by a dull, grinding routine. Your life is a repeating pattern of waking before dawn, performing your chores in silence, and collapsing onto your hard sleeping mat long after the sun has set. The fear is still there, but it's no longer a sharp, stabbing pain. It has become a part of you, a low hum of anxiety that vibrates just beneath your skin. You have learned the first and most important lesson of the Forbidden City survival is an art of invisibility. Your Shifu continues his relentless training. His lessons are less about what to do and more about what not to do. Don't have an opinion. Don't show emotion. Don't be memorable. You are a vessel, he tells you one evening, his voice thin in the cool air. You exist to be filled with the will of your superiors. An empty vessel is useful. A vessel that thinks it has its own contents is broken and must be discarded. You practice this invisibility in everything you do. When you sweep the vast courtyards, you learn to move along the edges of the space, to keep your back to the walls, to become part of the architecture. When you deliver a message, you learn to speak the words exactly as they were given to you. Your face a blank mask, your voice a monotone. You are a human telephone, nothing more. Showing curiosity about the message's content would be a fatal error. You learn to read the air. You can feel a shift in mood in a room before a single word is spoken. You know by the tightness in a senior eunuch's shoulders that someone of high rank is displeased. You can tell by the way a curtain twitches that you are being watched. These are not mystical powers, they are the heightened senses of a prey animal, finely tuned to the slightest sign of danger. One of the most peculiar skills you must master is the art of listening without hearing. You will often be present in rooms where high-ranking officials or imperial consorts are having conversations. Your job is to be physically there, ready to serve, but to give every indication that their words are just meaningless sounds to you. You must perfect a look of serene blankness, your eyes focused on nothing. Of course, you are hearing everything. You are a living repository of secrets, gossip, and political maneuvering. But the moment you betray that you have processed any of it, you become a threat. This duality is exhausting, to be a sponge for information while pretending to be a stone. This is where your path can diverge. Most eunuchs, the vast majority, will live their entire lives in this state of terrified servitude, performing menial tasks and never rising above the rank of a basic servant. They are the background figures, the nameless, faceless men who populate the historical paintings of court life. But for a tiny, ambitious few, This repository of secrets becomes a form of currency. You witness a small example of this. An older eunuch, one of the mid-level supervisors, is in charge of provisioning a certain concubine's residence. You overhear him telling a quartermaster that the concubine's favorite lychees, which have just arrived from the south, are bruised and not fit for her. The quartermaster, terrified of offending the concubine, gives the eunuch a no, perfect batch. Later, you see that same eunuch sharing the bruise but actually perfect lychees with his own friends. It's a small-scale deception, a minor abuse of power, but it's a revelation. You see that information, even something as trivial as the ripeness of fruit, is a tool. The eunuch was just getting lychees, he was demonstrating his power, building his own network of favors, and enjoying a small luxury in a life that was supposed to have none. The concept of a eunuch's face or reputation is a fascinating, undebated aspect of palace life. Officially, you have no identity, no honor of your own. You are a slave to the emperor, and yet, within the eunuch hierarchy, a complex social structure exists. Historians argue about how formalized this was. Was there a secret eunuch society with its own rules and codes of conduct, or was it just a chaotic free for all? The evidence suggests something in between, a fluid system of patronage and rivalry. Your shifu is your patron. Offending him means you are an outcast. Gaining his favor means he might recommend you for a better position. Your test comes one day, unexpectedly. You are cleaning a corridor when two high-ranking consorts walk past, deep in conversation. They are speaking about a third concubine, the emperor's current favorite. Their words are dripping with venom and jealousy. They stop near you to admire a vase, their conversation continuing as if you are a piece of furniture. They are plotting, discussing how to subtly embarrass their rival in front of the emperor. Your heart is pounding. You know you should not be hearing this. You keep your head down, your hands rhythmically polishing the same spot on a wooden table. Your breathing slow and even. You are a statue. You are invisible. They finish their conversation and move on, not giving you a second glance. That night, you lie on your mat. The secret's burning in your mind. You have a choice. You could do nothing. That is the safe option, the one you have been trained for. Or, you could use this information. You could find a way to discreetly warn the favorite concubine's chief eunuch. It would be an immense risk. If you are discovered, you would be accused of spying and likely killed. But if you succeed, you would have earned the gratitude of a very powerful person. You would have taken your first step out of the shadows, your first step onto the playing board. You do nothing. Not yet. You are too new, too scared, but the seed has been planted. You now understand that being invisible is for survival, but to truly thrive in this place, you must learn how to be invisible and all-seeing at the same time. You must become a ghost who can occasionally move objects in the real world. That is the secret to power. As you navigate the treacherous currents of palace life, there is one object you never see, yet it looms large in your consciousness: your bow, your treasure, the small, sealed jar containing the proof of your sacrifice, now stored away in a dusty room under the watchful eye of the same palace administration that manages grain supplies and silk inventories. It's a bizarrely bureaucratic home for such a deeply personal item. You don't talk about it. No one does. It's a taboo subject, a source of required, collective shame. But its existence is a constant, unspoken reality. It is your anchor to the past and your collateral for the future. You are acutely aware that a piece of you is being held in storage, catalogued and filed away like a spare part for a machine. This practice is one of the most psychologically strange aspects of eunuch life, and it served several practical and symbolic purposes. On the most basic level, it was a tool of control. The palace held your bow hostage. If you committed a crime, ran away, or fell out of favor, the palace could destroy it. This was not just a threat of post-mortem desecration, it was a threat to your very soul. According to prevailing beliefs, a person had to be buried whole to be properly honored by their descendants and to find peace in the afterlife. To be buried incomplete was to be condemned to wander as a hungry ghost, a terrifying fate for a eunuch. Being reunited with his bow upon death was the only way to achieve this wholeness. The jar was your ticket to a peaceful eternity. So you behave. You follow the rules. You bow your head. Part of your obedience is driven by fear of immediate punishment. But another, deeper part is driven by the desire to one day, decades from now, reclaim that jar. But the bow was more than just spiritual insurance. It was also your career pass. This is a cold, hard fact of the palace bureaucracy that sounds almost unbelievable. If you wanted a promotion, you had to present your bow for inspection. When a senior eunuch position became vacant, the candidates would have to go through a process. An official would retrieve their sealed jars from storage. The jars would be unsealed and the contents verified. This served as a grim, physical confirmation that you were, indeed, fully a eunuch. That the procedure had been complete and you posed no risk. It was a recurring humiliation, a reminder that the basis of your qualification for advancement was the totality of your mutilation. Imagine the scene. You are now, perhaps, 30 years old. You have served diligently for 2 decades. You are intelligent, capable, and have the respect of your peers. You are being considered for the position of head of laundry, a significant step up. You stand before a council of senior eunuchs and officials from the department of the palace household. A clerk brings in a dusty jar with your name and date of entry written on a faded label. The seal is broken. The contents are tipped out for a brief, clinical inspection. The officials nod. You are confirmed. You may now be promoted. The contents are carefully placed back in the jar, which is resealed and returned to its shelf, waiting for your next promotion, or your death. Historians have struggled to understand full cultural meaning of this. Was it purely a bureaucratic tool, or was there a deeper, more twisted psychological game at play? Some scholars argue that the bow represented the eunuch's original sin, the foundational sacrifice that he had to repeatedly acknowledge in order to advance within the system that was built on it. It was a way of ensuring that no matter how powerful a eunuch became, he could never forget the brutal origins of his status. He was, and always would be, fundamentally defined by his loss. There's also a strange, sad folklore that grew up around the bow. Eunuchs would sometimes pay bribes to have their jars stored on a higher shelf, believing it was better feng shui. Some would pay clerks to ensure their jar was cleaned periodically. It became an object of a strange, displaced affection and anxiety. It was the part of them that was pure, the part that was left behind in the world of men, and they worried over it like a lost child. A particularly weird and unverified rumor suggests that some very wealthy, high-ranking eunuchs would have elaborate, jewel-encrusted boxes made for their bow, treating it like a holy relic. You, as a young, low-ranking eunuch, are decades away from any promotion that would require such an inspection. For now, the bow is a more abstract concept, but it affects you in tangible ways. You might have nightmares about it being lost or broken. You might feel a pang of anxiety when you walk past the building where you know the storage room is located. It is the physical manifestation of your brokenness, the one thing you must protect in order to one day be whole again. It's a profound paradox. The evidence of your mutilation is the only thing that can guarantee your eventual peace. It's the lock and the key, all in one small, sad, sealed jar. Shortly after you are deemed to have settled into the initial rhythm of palace life, another piece of your old identity is formally stripped away. You are summoned one morning. Along with a handful of other novices, you stand in a sparse, official-looking room before a mid-level eunuch administrator who holds a writing brush and a ledger. He doesn't ask for your name. He probably doesn't care what it was. Your birth name, the one your mother whispered to you, the one your father used when he called you in from the fields, is a relic of a life that no longer exists. It is a loose thread that must be snipped. The administrator looks you over, his gaze clinical and detached. He seems to be sizing you up, not for your character, but for your potential role. He then turns to his ledger, dips his brush in ink, and in a few swift, elegant strokes, Write down your new name. He might call you Li Di, meaning plum virtue, or Wang Yan, meaning king's peace. The names given to eunuchs were often a strange mix of the poetic, the auspicious, and the subtle. They often contain characters like loyalty Zhong, virtue De, fortune Fu, or tranquility An. The name is not for you, it's for the system. It's a designation, a tag that sorts you into the vast palace inventory. Your new name is announced to you. From this day, you are Wei Jin, he might say, prosperous loyalty. You are expected to learn it, respond to it, and forget you were ever anyone else. There is no ceremony, no celebration. It's an administrative act, as mundane as assigning a number to a storeroom. But for you, it's a profound moment of dislocation. You have lost a piece of your body, and now you have lost your name. The erasure is almost complete. This practice of renaming was common in many systems of servitude or institutional life, from monastic orders to armies. It was a powerful tool for breaking down an individual's sense of self and rebuilding it in the image of the institution. For a palace eunuch, it served a particularly vital purpose. It severed your ties to your family. If your name was Ergo Yu, or Second Do, a common rural name, it was a constant reminder of your humble, muddy origins. A name like Prosperous Loyalty instantly branded you as a product of the palace. It was a uniform for your identity. A lesser-known aspect of this renaming process is how it tied into the internal politics and patronage systems of the palace. Sometimes, a senior eunuch would gift a name to a promising young novice he was taking under his wing. The name might even include a character from the senior eunuch's own name, marking you as part of his lineage. This could be a great honor, immediately signaling to others that you were protected. Conversely, it could also make you a target for the senior eunuch's rivals. Your name was no longer just a label, it was a political statement. Historians debate how deeply this new identity was internalized. Did eunuchs truly forget their old names and selves? Or did they hold on to them in the secret corners of their minds? It's an impossible question to answer definitively. The official records, of course, only ever used the assigned palace names. In the few surviving personal letters or accounts from eunuchs, they always refer to themselves by their official palace designation. To do otherwise would have been unthinkable. A sign of nostalgia for a life they were supposed to have renounced. It would be seen as a form of disloyalty. However, human memory is a stubborn thing. It's likely that in the dead of night, lying on your sleeping mat, you would whisper your old name to yourself. It would be a small act of rebellion, a secret confirmation that the boy from the village still existed somewhere inside the polished, obedient servant. This new name also had a profound impact on your relationship with your family. If they were lucky enough to receive a letter or a small gift of money from you, a process that was heavily controlled and censored by the palace, it would be signed with your new name. Imagine your parents, who knew you as Xiao Shi Little Stone, receiving a formal note from a Wei Jin. It would be a stark reminder of the distance between their world and yours. You were no longer their son in the same way. You were a different person. A palace person. And what about your original family name? The one that connected you to generations of ancestors that, too, was effectively erased. You were now of the palace. If you ever managed to adopt a son later in life, a common practice for successful eunuchs seeking to create a lineage, that son would often take on your palace name, not your long-forgotten family name. You were the beginning of a new, artificial branch on the great family tree of China, a branch that could only ever exist in the shadow of the throne. You practice writing your new name. The characters feel foreign in your hand. You say it out loud until it no longer feels strange on your tongue. Wei Jin, Wei Jin. You are Wei Jin. It is a simple, elegant name. It speaks of a future you hope to have, one of prosperity and favor. But it also feels like a mask. You have learned to wear the blank expression, the silent demeanor. And now you have a name to match. You are being perfectly tailored for your role. Every rough edge of your former life's ended down. Every trace of your origins methodically painted over. The process of becoming a useful tool is nearly complete. After months of grueling, generic chores in the outer service areas, the day finally comes. Your Shifu informs you that you have been given a new assignment. You have been chosen to serve in the inner court, the domain of the emperor's consorts and concubines. This is the moment every young eunuch dreads and desires in equal measure. It's a promotion, a step up from the anonymous drudgery of the barracks. But it is also a leap into the most delicate, dangerous, and emotionally fraught part of the entire Forbidden City. You are led through a series of gates you have never been allowed to pass before, each one guarded by more senior eunuchs with impassive faces. The atmosphere changes dramatically. The stark, masculine functionality of the outer courts gives way to a world of exquisite, almost suffocating femininity. The air grows thick with the scent of flowers, perfumes, and cooking delicacies. You walk through meticulously manicured gardens, past pavilions with lyrical names like the Palace of Gathering Elegance or the Hall of Celestial Favor. You hear the faint sound of a stringed instrument, a guzheng, being played somewhere nearby. The notes like drops of water in a quiet pool. You might even hear the distant, silvery laughter of women. This is the Hugom, the Rhea Palace. In the Ottoman Empire, it was the harem. The names are different, but the concept is the same: a vast, enclosed world populated by thousands of women whose sole purpose is to serve and potentially bear a son for one man, the emperor. And you, a boy who has been made safe, are now one of its guardians and caretakers. Your new role is that of a low-level attendant in one of the lesser concubines' residences. Your duties are simple but require immense care. You might be tasked with trimming the wicks of the lanterns, carrying trays of food from the imperial kitchens, or holding a silk fan to gently stir the air on a hot afternoon. The key is to be present but unobtrusive, efficient but silent. You are immediately struck by the sheer sensory overload. The women's quarters are a riot of color and texture. Gowns of iridescent silk are draped over lacquered screens. Intricate jade and pearl hairpins sit on polished wooden vanities. Bronze mirrors reflect the soft light from paper windows. The world you came from was one of mud and straw. This is a world woven moonlight and jewels. And you are surrounded by women, hundreds of them, from the highest-ranking imperial consorts to the lowly serving girls. It is a female universe. You and the other eunuchs are the only males permitted to exist here, and you are a constant, walking paradox within it. You are there to serve their needs, to witness their most intimate moments, their morning routines, their arguments, their tears, yet you are fundamentally, irrevocably separate from them. You are the ultimate insider and the ultimate outsider, all at once. One of the most surprising and little discussed realities of this world is the smell. Beyond the pleasant perfumes, there was the unique scent of the place itself, with so many women living in close quarters. The smells of cosmetics, laundry, monthly cycles, and cooking all blended together. For a young boy like you, who had only ever known the earthy smells of a village and the sterile fear of the training barracks, this constant immersion in a world of female biology and artifice would have been overwhelming. A daily reminder of the life you could observe but never participate in. You learn quickly that this beautiful, fragrant world is a battlefield. The competition for the emperor's attention is a silent, deadly war fought with whispers, glances, and gestures. A new dress, a perfectly composed poem, a skillfully prepared dish, these are all weapons. And the eunuchs are the arms dealers, the messengers, and the spies. Your position is incredibly precarious. A kind word from a concubine could make your life easier. Her displeasure could see you beaten or reassigned to the worst possible job, cleaning the latrines for the rest of your days. You learn to navigate the complex web of alliances and rivalries. You learn which of the head serving maids has the ear of the mistress, and which of the other eunuchs is secretly reporting to a rival concubine. Historians often struggle to convey the sheer psychological tension of this position. You are in a state of constant, low-level arousal, not sexual, but of the senses. You are surrounded by beauty, sound, and scent, a world designed to appeal to a man. Yet you are not one. This constant stimulation, combined with the absolute prohibition on acting upon it, is a form of psychological torment. What did it do to a person's mind to live day in and day out as a watchman in a paradise? He was forever barred from entering the official histories, written by Confucian scholars who viewed the inner court as a source of corrupting yin energy, simply condemned it. They portrayed the eunuchs as being inevitably warped by this environment, their minds becoming as twisted and feminine as their surroundings. This is, of course, a deeply misogynistic and simplistic view, but it reflects how the outside world perceived your strange existence. You see the loneliness of these women. You see a young concubine, barely older than you, weeping silently by a window because the emperor has not visited her in months. You see the bitter jealousy between two former friends who are now rivals for a single night of imperial favor. You are the silent witness to it all. You pour their tea. You listen to their sad songs, and you pretend not to understand the deep, aching sorrow that permeates this beautiful prison. You are the guardian of 1,000 secrets, 1,000 heartbreaks, and 1,000 desperate ambitions, and in their gilded cage, you are finding your own. As you settle into your role within the perfumed walls of the inner court, you begin to understand your function more deeply. You are not just a servant. You are not just a guard. You are, in essence, a piece of imperial technology. You are a human surveillance camera, a mobile recording device with legs, tasked with being the emperor's eyes and ears in a place he cannot personally monitor at all times. The emperor is one man, his harem. Whether in Beijing's Forbidden City or Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, might contain hundreds, even thousands of women. It is a physical impossibility for him to know what is happening in every courtyard, every pavilion, every chamber, who is friends with whom, who is plotting, who is ill, who is secretly practicing forbidden arts, who is unhappy. This information is vital. A discontented harem can be a source of immense political instability, especially if factions form around different potential heirs. And so, there is you. Your training in invisibility, in listening without seeming to hear, now reveals its true purpose. Your primary job is to observe and report. Every day, senior eunuchs will discreetly collect information from juniors like you. They will ask seemingly casual questions. Did Lady Wei seem in good spirits today? What was the topic of conversation in the garden this afternoon? Did the new silks from Suzhou please the second consort? Your answers must be precise, factual, and devoid of personal opinion. You report that Lady Wei did not touch her midday meal. You report that the ladies in the garden spoke of the unusually early plum blossoms. You report that the second consort remarked the silk was a shade lighter than she expected. You are a censor, collecting raw data. It is up to your superiors to analyze this data, to see the patterns, and to decide what is worthy of the emperor's attention. A fascinating, and often overlooked, aspect of this role was the flop house, a real institution within the Qing dynasty's palace known as the Qing Shifang Chamber of Respectful Service. This was the administrative office of eunuchs who managed the emperor's sex life. When the emperor wished to spend the night with a concubine, he wouldn't simply walk to her chambers. Instead, he would be presented with a tray of small, silver plaques, each bearing the name of a concubine who was available. He would flop the plaque of his chosen lady. This is where your role as an observer became critical. The eunuchs of the Qing Shifang didn't just manage the logistics, they were the gatekeepers. Their reports on a concubine's health, mood, and recent behavior could influence whether her name plaque was even included on the tray that night. If your report indicated that a certain lady had been quarrelsome or melancholic, the senior eunuchs might decide it wise to arrest her for a few days, giving another, more cheerful concubine a chance. You, with your simple, factual observations, were an unwitting player in this nightly lottery of imperial favor. You are, in effect, part of a human nervous system for the palace. A whisper in a remote courtyard can, through a chain of eunuch reporting, become a thought in the emperor's mind within hours. This gave the eunuch hierarchy immense, albeit subtle, power. They could amplify certain voices and silence others. They could frame a concubine's innocent remark as a complaint, or her genuine sadness as a sign of disrespect. Historians are still debating the extent to which this information was systematically manipulated. Were eunuchs largely faithful conduits of information, as they were supposed to be, or was there a constant, simmering undercurrent of editorializing, of spinning the facts to favor their preferred candidates in the harem and ruin their rivals? The official records, written by the eunuchs themselves, naturally portray a system of perfect, unbiased service, but the countless stories of harem intrigue, of concubines rising and falling with bewildering speed, suggest that the information highway was frequently full of detours and deliberate traffic jams. You learn this dangerous game firsthand. One day, you are serving tea to your mistress, a low-ranking concubine. She is in a rare, good mood and makes a joke, a slightly irreverent one, about the emperor's new, rather unflattering portrait. It's a harmless, fleeting moment of levity in a stressful life. Later, your immediate superior, a grim-faced eunuch named Gao, asks you about your mistress's day. You have a choice. You can report the joke accurately, but you know Gao dislikes your mistress and is allied with her rival in the next courtyard. He could easily twist the story, presenting the joke as a sign of mockery and disloyalty. Your mistress would be punished, and your imposition would become untenable. Or you could lie by omission. You could simply say she was in a cheerful mood and discuss the beauty of the gardens. This protects her and you, but it is a dereliction of your primary duty. It is your first conscious act of censorship. You are no longer just a camera, you are an editor. You choose to lie. You report the cheerful mood in the gardens. Gao nods, seemingly satisfied. But you see a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. He knows you're holding something back. You have just entered the game, and you've made your first move. From this day on, every report you make will be a calculated decision. You will weigh truth against loyalty, safety against duty. You are beginning to understand that in the Forbidden City, information is never neutral. It is either a weapon or a shield, and you must learn how to use it as both. Your life in the inner court is a masterclass in proximity and distance. You are closer to the imperial women than any man, apart from the emperor himself, could ever be. You are a witness to their most unguarded moments. You might be the one to help a concubine with a difficult dress fastening, your fingers brushing against the fine silk on her back. You might hold the bronze basin while she washes her face, seeing her without the elaborate makeup she wears for the court. You might be the one standing just outside the bath chamber, handing warm towels through the screen, the steam carrying the scent of her floral soap. This intimacy is purely functional. It is the intimacy of a nurse with a patient, or a groom with a prized horse. And yet, you are not a machine. You are a young man with the memory of what you once were, and your senses are alive. You can feel the warmth radiating from her skin on a cold morning. You can smell the jasmine oil in her hair as you adjust a hairpin. You can hear the soft sigh she lets out when she believes no one is truly listening. This is the core of the psychological torment that your role entails. You exist in a state of constant, heightened sensuality that you are forbidden from acknowledging, let alone acting upon. The entire system is built on the absolute prohibition of touch. Any physical contact beyond the bounds of your prescribed duties is a capital offense. A lingering hand, a glance held a second too long, a word spoken too softly, any of these could be interpreted as a transgression. The punishment for such a transgression was swift and absolute. The guilty eunuch would be executed, often by the slow slice method, a horrific death designed as a deterrent to others. The woman involved, even if she was the initiator, would also face severe consequences. From being demoted and sent to the cold palace, a euphemism for a form of permanent house arrest, to being forced to commit suicide. The integrity of the imperial bloodline was paramount, and any hint of a threat to it was stamped out with merciless finality. So you learn to control yourself with a level of discipline that is almost superhuman. You develop what could be called a functional blindness. You see the curve of a neck as you fasten a pearl necklace, but you train your mind to register it as a task, not a feature of beauty. You hand a warm cup of tea to a pair of delicate hands, but you focus on the temperature of the porcelain, not the softness of her fingers. It's a constant, exhausting act of mental dissociation. A strange and little-known aspect of court life that highlights this tension is the role of eunuchs in physical examinations. When an imperial consort was ill, it was often a senior eunuch, one with some rudimentary medical knowledge, who would perform the initial assessment before the official court physician was called. The physician, being an intact man, was often not allowed to directly touch the imperial woman. He would have to make his diagnosis from behind a screen, relying on the eunuch's description of the symptoms and, sometimes, by feeling a pulse through a silk ribbon tied around the patient's wrist. In this bizarre scenario, you, the eunuch, became the physician's hands, the trusted intermediary allowed to perform a clinical touch that was denied to a professional. This placed you in a position of immense trust and responsibility, further blurring the lines of your strange intimacy. Historians continue to debate the emotional and psychological fallout of this existence. Did this constant suppression of natural human response lead to the cruelty and avarice that so many eunuchs were accused of? Some modern psychological interpretations suggest that this forced denial of one's own humanity could lead to a profound empathy deficit. If you are forced to treat yourself and others as objects, you may eventually start to believe it. Others argue the opposite, that being a silent witness to so much female suffering, the loneliness, the jealousy, the fear might have fostered a unique, albeit hidden, sense of compassion. You experience this conflict internally. You feel a pang of genuine sympathy for a young concubine who has been away from her family for years and weeps over a letter from home. You want to offer a word of comfort, a gesture of kindness, but you can't. The rules forbid it. Your role requires you to be a silent, unfeeling wall. So you simply stand by, holding the tray, your face a perfect mask of indifference, while inside, you feel a flicker of shared humanity. This enforced emotional distance creates a profound loneliness. You are surrounded by people, yet you can connect with none of them. The women see you as a tool, a convenience, sometimes a confidant, but never an equal. The other eunuchs are your rivals, not your brothers. You are an island, and the sea around you is a tempting, beautiful, and lethal expanse of forbidden contact. You learn that the most dangerous place in the Forbidden City is not in front of a soldier's sword, but in the small, charged space between your hand and the person you are serving. It is a space you must navigate with a flawless precision, because a single miscalculation would be your last. You are now a fixture in the women's quarters, a familiar shadow gliding through the corridors. You've mastered the art of being present and invisible. But as you observe the intricate power dynamics of this female world, you realize you occupy a truly bizarre position within it. You are not a man, so you are not a threat. You are not a woman, so you are not a competitor. You are a third thing, a false man. And this unique status gives you a strange and precarious role to play in the endless drama of the harem. The entire social structure of the inner court is a pyramid, with the Empress Dowager and the Empress at the top, followed by a complex hierarchy of consorts, concubines, and ladies-in-waiting, all the way down to the lowest-ranking serving girls. It is a world run by women, for the benefit of one man, but the power, while real, is entirely dependent on his favor. In this context, you and your fellow eunuchs are the permanent civil service, the administrative backbone of this feminine empire. The women come and go, they can be promoted, demoted, or die, but the eunuchs remain. You discover that your ungendered status is both a blessing and a curse. Because you are not a woman, you are exempt from their direct rivalries. You cannot marry the emperor, bear his child, or win his romantic affection. This makes you, in some ways, a safe person to talk to. A lonely concubine might confide in you, her trusted attendant, about her frustrations or her fears. knowing you are not going to use her secrets to steal the emperor's attention for yourself. You become a repository for anxieties that she cannot share with her female attendants, who may be spies for a rival. However, because you are not a real man, you are often treated with a casual contempt. The women might discuss their most intimate affairs in front of you as if you weren't there, your lack of sexuality making you, in their eyes, less than human, like a piece of furniture or a pet. You are privy to everything but a participant in nothing. This constant exposure to the raw, unfiltered emotional lives of others, while being forced to suppress your own, is a heavy burden to carry. A fascinating, and often misunderstood, aspect of this dynamic is the power that female lead households had over their assigned eunuchs. In the Ottoman harem, for example, powerful women like the Valide Sultan, the mother of the reigning sultan, or the Hosekai Sultan, the chief consort, had their own vast households, and they had direct authority over the eunuchs who served them. A senior eunuch in the service of the Valide Sultan owed his primary loyalty to her, not necessarily to the sultan himself. This created powerful parallel structures within the palace. You weren't just a palace eunuch, you were Lady Wei's eunuch, and your fate was tied directly to hers. This is where the idea of the eunuch as a surrogate man in a female world comes into play. While you could not be a husband or a lover, you could be a brother, a son, a confidant, a financial manager, or a political advisor, a high-ranking consort, isolated from her male relatives and the outside world, would rely on her chief eunuch for everything. He would manage her accounts, deal with merchants, gather intelligence from the outer court, and advise her on how to navigate palace politics. This is the path to power you now see before you. If you remain loyal, clever, and indispensable to your mistress, you can rise as she rises. You are no longer just cleaning and serving, you are becoming her agent, her proxy in a world she cannot enter. You get a small taste of this. Your mistress, a minor concubine named Lady May, is a talented painter, but she has run out of a specific kind of ink made with pine soot from a particular province. The standard palace supply is not good enough. She is frustrated, knowing that presenting a mediocre painting to the emperor would be worse than presenting nothing at all. You see her despair. Using the small network of contacts, you've been carefully building a friendship with a eunuch in the quartermaster's office. A favor you did for a guard at the delivery gate, you managed to procure a small, high-quality inkstone for her, smuggled in with a shipment of vegetables. When you present it to her, her eyes light up with genuine gratitude. She looks at you, really looks at you, for the first time, not as a servant, but as a problem solver. And hello, Wei Jin, she says, using your name with a newfound respect. You are very resourceful. In that moment, your relationship shifts. You have proven your worth beyond your basic duties. You have become useful in a way that makes you more than just a pair of hands. The debate among historians rages on this point: to what extent did eunuchs act as independent agents versus loyal extensions of their mistresses? While the traditional Confucian narrative portrays eunuchs as manipulative schimas who would lead their mistresses astray for their own gain, a more modern, nuanced view suggests a symbiotic relationship. The eunuch's power was derived from his mistress's status, so it was in his best interest to serve her loyally. However, as a eunuch's own network and influence grew, the lines of who was serving whom could begin to blur. You are still a long way from that kind of influence, but for the first time, you feel a flicker of something other than fear or duty. You feel a sense of purpose. You have helped someone. You have made a difference in your small corner of this gilded cage. You start to see that being a false man in a woman's world doesn't just have to be a curse. It can be a unique kind of power, a key that unlocks doors that are closed to everyone else. Life settles into a strange rhythm, a delicate dance of service and observation. Many of your days are filled with a profound, beautiful boredom. You stand for hours in silent attendance, a living statue in a room filled with silken sandalwood. In these long, quiet stretches, you become an accidental ethnographer of the inner court's hidden emotional landscape. One afternoon, You are on duty in a small pavilion overlooking a KOI pond. Your mistress and another concubine are playing a game of go, their long sleeves occasionally whispering against the wooden board. The air is warm and still. They believe you are just a fixture, part of the scenery. Your mind as blank as your expression. And so, they talk. At first, their conversation is light, the usual palace gossip. They dissect a new gown worn by a rival, critique the latest offering from the imperial kitchens, and speculate on when the emperor might next visit their quadrant of the city. But then, the tone shifts, the game of go falters. The stones left untouched. One of the women, a young girl from a southern province, begins to speak of her home. She doesn't speak of a grand estate, she speaks of a small, humid courtyard where she used to sit with her grandmother and peel lotus seeds. She describes the taste of the street food her brother would sneak to her, the sound of the rain on the banana leaves outside her window, the specific shade of orange of the persimmons in their garden. Her voice is soft, thick with a nostalgia so potent you can almost taste it. The other concubine doesn't respond with gossip or platitudes. She simply listens, her own eyes growing distant. When the first one finishes, the second one whispers, "I miss the snow." She talks about the feeling of cold, clean air in her lungs and the crunch of frozen ground under her boots, things she will likely never experience again in the mild climate of the capital. In that moment, standing perfectly still a few feet away, you are struck by a powerful realization. These women, whom you have seen as players in a ruthless game, as symbols of status and ambition, are also just girls. Achingly homesick and profoundly lonely. They are prisoners in the most beautiful prison on earth. Their silks are a uniform, their jewels a type of chain. Their entire existence has been narrowed to a single, consuming purpose, waiting for a man who is more of a concept than a husband. This kind of overheard, intimate conversation was likely the primary way a eunuch would have understood the true state of the court. The official reports dealt with facts and events, but the truth of the human heart was revealed in these stolen moments. A lesser-known aspect of palace life is the sheer amount of poetry written by imperial women. Much of it is filled with themes of longing, isolation, and the passage of time, often using metaphors of caged birds or wilting flowers. It was a safe, sanctioned outlet for a sorrow that could not be spoken aloud. As a eunuch, you might be the one tasked with grinding the ink or holding the paper for a consort as she composed such a verse, making you a direct, albeit silent, participant in her act of catharsis. You begin to see this loneliness everywhere. You see it in the fierce, almost desperate affection a childless consort showers upon her lapdog. You see it in the obsessive attention to detail another pours into her embroidery, creating fantastically complex landscapes she will never visit. These are not just hobbies, they are anchors in a sea of uncertainty and waiting. The question of how eunuchs processed this emotional data is a major point of scholarly contention. Did it make them more compassionate, or more cynical? The traditional historical view, penned by their political enemies, is that they became masters of emotional manipulation. They would see this loneliness not as a tragedy, but as a weakness to be exploited. They could use a woman's homesickness to make her dependent on them, offering small comforts and favors in exchange for loyalty and information. But perhaps the reality was more complex. Perhaps, in their shared imprisonment, a fragile, unspoken bond could form. You, too, are a prisoner. You, too, have been ripped from your family and your home. You, too, have a name that is not your own. As you listen to the two women speak of their homes, you feel an unfamiliar pang of empathy. Their sorrow mirrors your own. You think of your own village, the smell of the dusty earth after a rare rain, the feel of your mother's rough hand. For a fleeting second, the vast gulf between your station and theirs disappears. You are all just exiles, dreaming of a life that is gone forever. This shared sense of loss, however, is a dangerous foundation for any kind of relationship. It is a flickering candle in a palace full of drafts. But the experience changes you. You begin to see the women you serve not just as mistresses or pawns, but as people. Your perception is deepening. You are no longer just a camera recording facts, you are beginning to understand the story. And this understanding, this empathy, will make you either a much better servant or a much more dangerous man. The Forbidden City is a universe of profound loneliness, a place where thousands of people live in close proximity yet are separated by invisible walls of status, ambition, and fear. In this emotional wasteland, any form of genuine connection is a precious and dangerous commodity. For eunuchs, who were denied the conventional comforts of family and romantic love, the need for companionship was particularly acute. And so, a unique and fascinating social institution arose from the shadows. Do as high, or perditing. On the surface, do as high was a simple arrangement. Two eunuchs, or a eunuch and a palace maid, would form a special bond. They would share their meals, pool their meager resources, look out for each other, and offer emotional support. It was a friendship, an alliance, a practical partnership for survival in a harsh environment, but it often went much deeper than that. It was, in essence, a form of surrogate marriage. The pair would refer to each other as husband and wife. They would create a small, shared home within their tiny quarters, decorating it with whatever small trinkets they could acquire. They would celebrate festivals together and nurse each other through sickness. It was an attempt to replicate the structure and comfort of a family life they were forever denied. You have been in the palace for several years now. The initial terror has subsided into a chronic, low-level watchfulness. You have a small circle of acquaintances, other junior eunuchs you share tasks with. Among them is a boy named Yu. He is quiet, like you, but with a sharp wit that he only reveals when the senior eunuchs are out of earshot. You find yourselves seeking each other out, sharing a stolen piece of fruit or a moment of silent complaint about a harsh supervisor. A friendship is forming, a small point of light in the oppressive gloom. One evening, Liu quietly suggests it. Wei Jin, he says, not looking at you, perhaps we should eat together. He doesn't say the word do as high, but you both know what he means. It's a proposal. He is offering you a partnership, an alliance against the crushing loneliness of the palace. You agree. From that day on, your lives change in small but significant ways. You combine your rations, which means you sometimes have enough for a slightly more substantial meal. When you receive a small tip from your mistress, you share it with Liu when he is sick with a fever. You bribe another eunuch to cover his duties and bring him cool water. You have someone who is unequivocally on your side. For the first time since you left your village, you are not entirely alone. The practice of do as high is a topic of great interest and some controversy among historians. It was technically forbidden. The palace regulations aimed to prevent any kind of personal attachment or factionalism. Eunuchs and maids were supposed to be loyal only to the emperor and their designated masters. Forming a private, intense bond was seen as a distraction at best, and a potential conspiracy at worst. Punishments for being discovered in a do-as-high relationship could be severe. And yet, the practice was rampant. It was an open secret, often tolerated by senior eunuchs and even imperial masters as long as it didn't interfere with work. Why? Perhaps because they understood, on a practical level, that a lonely, miserable servant is an inefficient one. A eunuch with a do-as-high partner was more stable, more content, and therefore, a better worker. The nature of these relationships varied greatly. Some were purely platonic partnerships of convenience, but many, especially those between a eunuch and a palace maid, were deeply romantic and emotional. They exchanged gifts, read poetry for each other, and pledged lifelong fidelity. There is a whole genre of sad, beautiful stories in Chinese literature about these doomed palace romances. A stranger and more obscure form of this relationship was one formed between two eunuchs, like the one you have with Liu. What was the nature of this bond? It was certainly not sexual in the conventional sense. It was a deep, brotherly love. a bosom friendship forged in a shared, traumatic experience that no one on the outside could possibly understand. You and Liu could talk, in veiled terms, about the lingering physical discomforts, the phantom pains, the shared humiliation of your existence. You could understand each other's fears and ambitions without judgment. He was the only person in the world who knew exactly what it was like to be you. This bond, this duo's high jobbing tools, becomes your anchor. The palace is still a dangerous, terrifying place, but it is no longer unbearable. When you are reprimanded by your mistress, Liu is there in the evening to listen. When he acquires a rare, sweet orange, he saves half for you. You look out for each other's political survival, sharing scraps of information and warning each other of shifting alliances. Be wary of Eunuch Gal. Liu whispers to you one night. I saw him speaking with the chief attendant of Lady Shu, your mistress's rival. This information is more valuable than gold. Your little partnership is a tiny act of rebellion. You are creating a private world, a pocket of warmth and loyalty in a system designed to traumatize you. You are building a family where none was supposed to exist. It's a fragile construction, one that could be shattered at any moment by a suspicious supervisor or a change in palace policy. But for now, it is everything. It is the secret that keeps you sane. Years pass. The boy you were is a distant memory, a ghost from another life. You are a young man now, perhaps in your early 20s. Though you look younger, your face smooth and unlined. You have become adept at palace life. You are Wei Jin, a mid-level eunuch in the service of Lady Mei. Your duo's high partnership with Liu is a quiet source of stability. You have learned the rules. You know the players, and you have survived. But survival is a low bar. And a new, unfamiliar feeling has begun to stir within you, a dangerous, forbidden tenderness. Lady Mei is no longer the nervous, newly arrived concubine she once was. She has matured within the palace walls. But the years have not been entirely kind. She has never been a favorite of the emperor. His visits are rare, dutiful, and brief. She has not borne a son, the ultimate currency in the inner court. As other, younger women have captured the emperor's fleeting attention, Lady Mei has slowly been relegated to the quiet backwaters of the harem. She is becoming one of the forgotten ones. And as her status has waned, your role in her life has grown. You are no longer just an attendant. You are her chief eunuch, her confidant, her manager, and her only real friend. You manage her household accounts, ensuring her allowance is stretched to maintain a semblance of dignity. You are the one who listens to her recite the new poems she writes, poems filled with a gentle melancholy. You are the one who praises her delicate paintings of birds and bamboo, knowing that you may be the only person who sees them for weeks. A subtle intimacy has grown between you, born of shared loneliness and long, quiet afternoons. It is an intimacy devoid of touch, yet it is palpable. It exists in the way she smiles when you enter the room, a genuine smile, not the formal one she reserves for others. It exists in the way you know exactly how she likes her tea, without her ever needing to ask. It exists in the long, comfortable silences that can stretch between you as she embarks on a complex piece of embroidery and you stand in attendance nearby. One rainy afternoon, she receives a letter from her family. You'll watch as she reads it, her shoulders slumping. Her younger sister is getting married. A wave of profound sadness washes over her face. She doesn't weep. She is too disciplined for that. But you see the glistening in her eyes. She will have a home. Lady Mei whispers, more to herself than to you. A real home. A husband who is just hers. Children. In that moment, an invisible barrier within you breaks. The professional detachment you have cultivated for a decade shatters. You see not a royal concubine, a superior being, but a deeply unhappy young woman trapped in a life she did not choose, and a powerful, protective instinct swells in your chest. It is not ambition. It is not desire in the way the world understands it. It is something else, a profound, aching empathy that feels dangerously like love. You take a step forward. You want to say something, anything, to comfort her. But you catch yourself. You remember the rules. You remember the penalty for crossing that line. You are a eunuch. She is an imperial consort. You are her servant. The gulf between you is absolute and uncrossable. To speak a word of personal comfort would be an unforgivable presumption. This kind of forbidden, emotional attachment between a eunuch and a concubine is a recurring theme in the folklore and secret histories of the palace. It was the ultimate taboo. While a due as high with a palace maid was often tolerated, a bond with one of the emperor's women was a direct challenge to his ownership. It was treason of the heart. Historians are deeply divided on how common these relationships were. The official records are, of course, silent on the matter, except for the occasional, brutal account of a discovery and subsequent punishment. Some scholars argue that given the thousands of people living in these emotionally charged, isolated conditions, such attachments were inevitable, a natural human response to loneliness. They suggest that there were likely countless such love stories that were never discovered, lived out in whispers and glances. Other, more skeptical historians argue that the risks were so immense that any eunuch with a sense of self-preservation would have suppressed such feelings ruthlessly. They believe the stories are more fiction than fact, romanticized tales of a grim reality. The physical aspect of such a relationship is, of course, out of the question. But what about an emotional affair, a meeting of minds, a shared, secret world of mutual affection? This was a grey area. One that was perhaps even more threatening to the palace order than a purely physical transgression. A concubine who had found emotional fulfillment with a eunuch might no longer strive for the emperor's favor. She might become indifferent to her primary duty. Her heart would have been stolen, and that was a theft the emperor could not abide. You stand frozen, a war raging inside you. Your training, your fear, your very instinct for survival screams at you to remain silent, to retreat back into the role of the invisible servant. But your heart, a part of you that you thought had been carved out long ago, urges you to connect, to offer a moment of human solidarity. You do neither. You simply meet her gaze, and for a single, terrifying second, you let the mask drop. You let her see the empathy in your eyes. You let her see that you understand. She sees it. Her breath hitches almost imperceptibly. A silent, dangerous message has been passed between you. A line has been crossed, not with a touch or a word, but with a look. The room is suddenly charged with a new, terrifying energy. You have established a secret, a shared understanding that sets you both apart from the world and puts you both in mortal danger. The unspoken secret between you and Lady May hangs in the air, a beautiful and terrifying crystal that could shatter at any moment. Your loyalty to her is no longer just a matter of duty, it is now a fierce, personal commitment. You see her languishing, forgotten by the emperor, and the injustice of it ignites a spark of ambition within you. It's not for yourself, not yet. It's for her. You decide you will not let her simply fade away. You will do something. This is your first conscious step into the deadly game of palace power. Your chance comes in a mundane and unexpected way. As Lady May's chief eunuch, part of your job is to manage the flow of official documents and gifts to her residence. One day, a scroll arrives from the Ministry of Rites. It is a list of consorts who have been selected to perform a ceremonial role at the upcoming winter solstice sacrifice, one of the most important rituals of the year. To be chosen is a great honor, a sign of imperial favor. As expected, Lady May's name is not on the list. You are about to put the scroll away when you notice something. There is a small, addended note at the bottom from a junior clerk in the ministry. It mentions that one of the chosen consorts, Lady Shu, your mistress's old rival, has been feeling unwell and may have to withdraw. The note is a formality, a piece of administrative trivia that most would ignore. But in the information-starved world of the Forbidden City, it is a nugget of pure gold. Your mind races. If Lady Shu withdraws, her spot will need to be filled. The choice of a replacement would fall to the head of the Ministry of Rites, a deeply conservative and protocol-obsessed old man, in consultation with the chief eunuchs of the inner court. They would likely pick another high-ranking consort. Lady May would not even be a consideration. But you know something else. A few weeks ago, while helping the palace librarian air out some old texts, you had a brief conversation with him. The librarian, a fussy old eunuch, had complained that no one in the palace appreciated the classics anymore. He mentioned that the head of the Ministry of Rites was a passionate scholar of the poet Qu Yuan, and was always lamenting that the younger generation found his work too obscure. And you know that Lady May, in her lonely hours, has been meticulously practicing her calligraphy by copying the verses of that very same poet, Qu Yuan. The pieces are there. They are scattered, seemingly unrelated, but you see the pattern. This is the essence of eunuch power, not brute force, but the subtle weaving together of disparate threads of information. You make a decision. It is a gamble, a huge one. You take a portion of your own savings. The money you and Liu have been carefully accumulating, and you use it to bribe a junior eunuch who works in the kitchens. Your request is simple. The next time the head of the Ministry of Rites is on duty at the palace overnight, his evening meal should include a very specific, rare type of fish that you know is his favorite, a delicacy from his home province. The dish is to be presented as a gift of esteem from Lady May, who heard of his fondness for it. Next, you approach the old palace librarian. You don't mention the ceremony. You simply tell him that your mistress, Lady May, is a great admirer of his scholarship and would be honored if he would look at one of her calligraphy scrolls, a copy of a Qu Yuan poem, and offer his critique. You hint that a good word from him to his friends in the ministry would be a great kindness. Then, you wait. It is a week of agonizing tension. You have set several delicate gears in motion, and now you can only hope they turn in the right direction. A few days later, the librarian sends a message back. He is deeply impressed with Lady May's work. The elegance of her brushstrokes, he writes, shows a profound understanding of the poet's sorrowful spirit. You know he will mention this to everyone he speaks to for the next month. The night of the winter solstice ceremony approaches. Word comes through the eunuch grapevine Lady Shu has indeed withdrawn. Citing her health, there's a scramble to find a replacement. That same day, the head of the Ministry of Rites, still glowing from the unexpected gift of his favorite fish, is chatting with the palace librarian, who happens to mention a minor consort, a Lady May, who possesses a truly remarkable scholarly and artistic spirit, a rare thing in the inner court these days. Later that afternoon, a new, official scroll arrives at your mistress's residence. Lady May has been chosen to replace Lady Shu in the winter solstice ceremony. She stares at the scroll, her eyes wide with disbelief. She turns to you, confused. How, she asks, they haven't thought of me in years. You simply bow your head. Heaven has smiled upon you. My lady, you say, your face a perfect mask of humble service. She knows it wasn't heaven. She knows it was you. In that moment, the dynamic between you shifts again. You are not just her protector, you are her champion. You have manipulated the system not for your own gain, but for hers. You have taken your first real step into the game of power. And you have won. This type of subtle influence is at the heart of the historical debate about eunuch power. Were they corrupt parasites who manipulated the system for greed, as the official narrative claims, or were they, at times, agents of balance, using their unique position to help those who had been unjustly overlooked? The truth, as always, is likely a complex mix. For every eunuch who schemed for a bribe, there may have been one like you, who schemed for a more complicated reason, a forbidden and declared loyalty of the heart. You have tasted power, and you find that it is a potent, intoxicating brew. Your successful maneuver to get Lady May a place in the winter solstice ceremony has a ripple effect. It's a small victory, but in the static world of the inner court, even a small change is noticeable. The Emperor sees her during the ritual. Perhaps for the first time in months, he is reminded of her quiet grace. His visits, while still not frequent, become less rare. Lady May's status, and by extension, your own, has stabilized. You are no longer on the verge of fading into obscurity. This taste of influence is addictive. You and your duo's high partner, Liu, begin to operate as a more effective team. He has been assigned to the Department of Palace Supplies, a seemingly dull but incredibly strategic position. Together, you have eyes and ears in both the perfumed chambers of the consorts and the dusty storerooms of the administration. You trade information, favors, and warnings. You are building a small but solid foundation of power. As you get older, moving into your late 20s and early 30s, a new anxiety begins to creep into your mind, a fear shared by all eunuchs. The future. You have no children. You have no family lineage to carry on your name. When you die, who will mourn you? Who will perform the proper ancestral rites to ensure your spirit is at peace? Who will protect your grave? The thought of being a forgotten ghost, the ultimate fate you sacrificed so much to avoid, is a constant, nagging terror. To combat this existential dread, successful eunuchs developed a unique solution. They would adopt a son. This was not a formal, legal adoption in the modern sense. It was a private arrangement, another of the palace's many open secrets. A wealthy, established eunuch would choose a promising, clever young eunuch, often a boy from his own home province, and take him under his wing. This boy would become his Yizi, his adopted son. The adopted son would serve his father as a personal attendant, but the relationship was much deeper. The senior eunuch would become his shifu, his mentor, teaching him the intricate politics of the court, introducing him to his network of contacts, and grooming him to be his successor. In return, the adopted son would pledge to treat his adoptive father with the filial piety a biological son would, caring for him in his old age and, most importantly, tending to his memory and his grave after his death. It was a way to build a family where none could exist naturally. It was a way to create a legacy. These eunuch families could become powerful dynasties within the palace, passing down influence, wealth, and connections from one generation to the next. You begin to see this all around you. The powerful chief eunuch, Li, has an adopted son who is always by his side, a handsome and ambitious young man who already carries himself with an air of authority. You see the genuine, fatherly pride in Li's eyes when he watches the boy. It is a pale imitation of real family life. Perhaps, but in the barren landscape of the Forbidden City, it is a desperately needed oasis. This practice is a fascinating and somewhat controversial topic for historians. To the Confucian scholar officials, it was the ultimate perversion. They saw it as a mockery of the sacred institution of the family. Another example of how eunuchs created an unnatural parallel society that threatened the proper patriarchal order. They argued that these adopted sons were not motivated by love or filial piety, but by pure greed, eager to inherit their father's ill-gotten wealth and power. The reality was likely more nuanced. While ambition surely played a role, there is evidence to suggest that genuine, deep affection could form in these relationships. For the senior eunuch, it was a chance to experience a form of fatherhood. For the young eunuch, it was a path to security and mentorship in a terrifying world. It was a relationship born of mutual need, both emotional and practical. You and Liu discuss it in hushed tones. We should think about it, he says one night, his voice serious. We are not getting any younger. If we fall from favor, we will have nothing, no one. The thought lodges in your mind. You start observing the new novices, the terrified boys who arrive from the chamber of purification just as you once did. You see their fear, their confusion. You see yourself in them. One boy in particular catches your eye. He is small and quiet, but his eyes are intelligent and watchful. He reminds you of yourself. All those years ago, he is assigned to a menial, that breaking job in the wood storage yard. He is a nobody, just as you were. You make a decision. You use your growing influence, a favor owed to you by a supervisor, to have the boy, whose name is Tong, reassigned. You bring him into your own sphere, giving him a lighter, cleaner job within Lady May's residence. You begin to teach him, just as your own Shifu once taught you, but with a kindness you never receive. You teach him how to observe, how to be silent, how to anticipate needs. You haven't formally adopted him yet. It's too soon. You are not yet powerful enough. But you are laying the groundwork. You are investing in your future. When you give Tom a small piece of sweet cake left over from your mistress's meal, the look of profound, surprised gratitude in his eyes gives you a feeling you have never experienced before. It's not the thrill of power or the want of romance. It is something else, a sense of responsibility, of continuation. You are building a family. It is a strange, unconventional family, a trio of broken men, you, your brother Liu, and your potential son Tong, bound together by a shared fate. It is a fragile defense against the loneliness of your world, an attempt to plant a tree in a desert of stone. You know that this, too, is a risk. Your little family could be seen as a faction, a conspiracy, but it is a risk you are now willing to take. You are no longer just trying to survive, you are trying to build a life. Your influence grows, slowly but surely. You are no longer just Wei Jin, servant to a minor consul. You are known in the inner court as a clever, resourceful man. Lady May, under your careful guidance, has navigated the treacherous waters of the harem and secured a position of quiet respect. Your brother Liu is now a mid-level manager in the palace supply chain, controlling the flow of everything from silk to rice. Your young protege, Tong, is learning quickly. You have built a small but effective network. But as your star rises within the vermilion walls of the Forbidden City, you become aware of a new and powerful source of animosity, one that comes from beyond the harem gates. You begin to encounter the scholar officials, the mandarins who run the vast bureaucracy of the empire, and in their eyes, you see a deep, unwavering, and profound contempt. These men are the intellectual and political elite of the empire. They have spent decades, a lifetime even, studying the Confucian classics, passing a series of brutally difficult examinations to earn their positions. They see themselves as the moral and intellectual guardians of the state, the true partners of the emperor in governing the realm. To them, you are an abomination. You are everything they are not. They achieved their status through intellect and literary merit. You achieved yours through a physical sacrifice they view as grotesque and degrading. They are men of family, with wives and sons to carry on their lineage, the bedrock of the Confucian social order. You are a mutilated being who creates false families that mock their most sacred traditions. They operate in the outer court, the world of masculine, sombre, rational governance yang. You operate in the inner court, a world they see as feminine, shadowy, and dangerously emotional yin. The conflict between the scholar officials and the palace eunuchs is one of the great, recurring dramas of Chinese history. It was an institutional and ideological war that lasted for dynasties. The officials wrote the histories, and so the narrative that has been passed down is almost universally hostile to eunuchs. In their telling, eunuchs are always portrayed as greedy, corrupt, and power-hungry schemers who gain the emperor's trust through flattery and deceit, leading him astray and bringing ruin to the dynasty. The evil eunuch is a stock character in Chinese literature and opera. You experience this animosity firsthand. One day, you are tasked with delivering a message from Lady May to the Grand Secretariat, the central organ of the government. As you enter the stately halls of the outer court, the atmosphere changes. The air, thick with the scent of old books and ink, is also thick with disdain. The officials you pass avert their gaze, but you can feel their eyes on your back. You hear a pair of them muttering, their voices low but audible. They use the derogatory term yin ren, castrated man. The words are meant to sting, and they do. You deliver your message to a senior official. He is impeccably polite, his face a mask of civility. But his politeness is colder than any overt insult. He does not offer you a seat. He takes the scroll from you with 2 fingers. As if it were contaminated, he speaks to you in a clipped, dismissive tone, making it clear that you are an unwelcome presence, a necessary evil he must tolerate for a moment. This encounter is a revelation. You realize that no matter how much influence you gain within the palace, in the eyes of the empire's ruling class, you will always be less than human. Your power is seen as illegitimate, a cancer on the body politic. A particularly curious flashpoint for this conflict was the issue of education. Throughout history, some powerful eunuchs sought to become literate and even scholarly. There were instances of emperors setting up special palace schools to educate eunuchs. This drove the scholar officials into a frenzy. To them, literacy and learning were the source of their power and moral authority. The idea of a eunuch reading the classics, writing policy memos, or even advising the emperor on matters of state was a horrifying usurpation of their role. They fought viciously to keep eunuchs illiterate and confined to domestic duties. The debate among modern historians is how much of this conflict was purely ideological and how much was a straightforward power struggle. Was the officials' hatred of eunuchs truly based on a philosophical belief in Confucian propriety, or were they simply terrified of a rival power center? The eunuchs had one advantage that the officials could never match: proximity. You could see the emperor every day. You knew his modes, his habits, his secret fears. An official might get a formal audience with the emperor once a month. This intimate access was the source of all eunuch power, and the officials both envied and feared it. You rolled back to the inner court, the coldness of the encounter clinging to you. The familiar, perfumed air of the harem feels, for the first time, like a refuge. Here, at least, your status is understood. Here, you are a player in the game. Up there, you are a monster. The experience hardens you. The scholar officials see you as a corrupting influence. Fine. You will use the tools you have. You cannot win their respect, so you will settle for their fear. You realize that your path to security lies not in trying to please the outside world, but in strengthening your position within your own. It means tying your fate ever more closely to the imperial family. It means getting closer to the ultimate source of power, the emperor himself. The contempt of the mandarins has not deterred you. It has focused your ambition like a magnifying glass focusing the sun's rays into a single, turning point. The contempt of the scholar officials has clarified your path. The only way to be safe is to become untouchable. And the only way to be untouchable is to gain the favor of the one person whose opinion truly matters, the emperor. Your ambition, once a small flame lit for the sake of Lady May, now burns for yourself. You begin to consciously, carefully, work your way toward the center of the web. Your opportunity arises through a combination of luck and cultivated skill. The emperor's personal attendants are a small, elite core of eunuchs. It is the most demanding and most prestigious position one can hold. These men are not just servants, they are the emperor's shadows, his confidants, and the managers of his daily life. One of the emperor's long-serving personal valets, an old eunuch who has been with him since he was a boy, falls gravely ill. A replacement is needed. The selection process is intense. The candidates are judged not just on their efficiency and discretion, but on 1,000 subtle qualities. The head eunuch of the imperial household, a man of immense power, is looking for someone with an almost preternatural ability to anticipate needs without being told. This is where your years of service to Lady May pay off. You have spent more than a decade learning to read the moods of a lonely, sensitive person. You know how to be present without being intrusive, how to offer comfort with a gesture rather than a word. You have honed your observational skills to a razor's edge. Through your network, a word from you about the head eunuch's preferences, a recommendation from the palace librarian who still remembers your scholarly interests, and, most importantly, a quiet word of praise from Lady May to the Empress Dowager. Your name makes it to the final list. You are summoned for an audition. The test is simple. You are to serve the emperor his morning tea for a week. Every day, you must prepare it and present it. No one tells you how he likes it. No one gives you any instructions. You are expected to figure it out. The first day, you prepare the tea according to the standard court protocol. The emperor drinks it without comment, his face impassive, but you watch him. You watch the slight tightening of his brow. You notice that he leaves a small amount at the bottom of the cup. The second day, you make the tea slightly weaker. He drinks it all. But you see him pause for a fraction of a second before the first sip, as if bracing himself. The third day, you notice the air is damp and cool. You make the tea slightly hotter than before and add a single, paper-thin slice of ginger, a traditional remedy for warding off a chill. When you present the tea, the emperor picks up the cup, inhales the faint, spicy aroma, and looks at you for the first time. He truly looks at you. He takes a sip, and a look of faint, surprised satisfaction crosses his face. He says nothing, but you know you have passed the test. A week later, you are appointed as one of his junior personal attendants. You have arrived. You are now in the throne room, the nerve center of the empire. Your life changes overnight. You wear finer silks. You eat better food. But the pressure is immense. The slightest mistake, a dropped cup, a forgotten preference, a moment of inattention could mean instant dismissal, or worse. You quickly learn that the emperor's trust is a double-edged sword. It grants you unprecedented access and influence. You are there when he meets with his Grand Council. You are there when he reads secret military dispatches. You hold the lantern for him as he practices calligraphy late into the night. You hear the unguarded remarks, the sighs of frustration, the moments of doubt. You know the true state of the empire and the true state of the emperor's mind in a way that not even his highest ministers do. This proximity gives you a new kind of power, an official presence, a memorial to the throne. You are the one who hands it to the emperor. You can remark, "The ink is smudged, Your Majesty. This seems a hasty work, subtly poisoning the well before he even reads a word." Or you can say, "The calligraphy is as clear as the author's reputation for honesty, Your Majesty," giving it a sheen of approval. You become a gatekeeper, a filter. This very power is what made high-ranking eunuchs so feared and hated. A strange but telling historical detail from some dynasties was the practice of chew on zhih while transmitting the decree. An emperor might give a verbal order, and it would be the duty of his chief eunuch to have it written down and issued as a formal edict. This gave the eunuch enormous power to interpret, and potentially twist, the emperor's words. The scholar officials claimed that many unpopular or corrupt policies were not the emperor's will at all, but were inventions of the eunuchs. The question of whether eunuchs were truly evil advisors or just convenient scapegoats for unpopular imperial decisions is a central debate in Chinese history. When a policy failed, it was far safer for everyone to blame the scheming eunuch who misled the Son of Heaven than to blame the Son of Heaven himself. The eunuch became a political lightning rod, drawing fire away from the throne. You are acutely aware of this danger. The emperor's favor is a warm, nourishing sun, but it can also burn. He confides in you about his frustrations with the bureaucracy, his annoyance with a particular general. He values your silence, your discretion, your seeming lack of personal ambition. He sees you as a loyal servant, a blank slate onto which he can project his thoughts. He does not see the ambition burning inside you. He does not see the intricate web of connections you have built. He does not see that you are carefully logging every piece of information, every secret, every weakness, using it to make yourself indispensable. You are playing the most dangerous game in the world. Every day you spend in his presence, you are walking a tightrope over a canyon. The fall is a long way down, and the rocks at the bottom are unforgiving. The years of walking the tightrope have paid off. You have not fallen. Instead, you have learned to dance upon it. The emperor, now older, has come to rely on you completely. You are no longer Wei Jin, the junior attendant. You are now the chief eunuch of the imperial household, the head of the entire palace administration. The boy from the muddy village is now one of the most powerful men in the empire. Your official duties are vast. You oversee thousands of eunuchs and palace maids. You manage the imperial budget, the security of the Forbidden City, and the logistics of the emperor's life. But your real power lies in your informal role. You are the emperor's gatekeeper, his chief of staff, his most trusted advisor. Ministers and generals who wish to see the emperor must go through you. Memorials and petitions reach his desk only after you have seen them. You have become the bottleneck through which the entire government must pass. This is the era of your life that will be recorded, with fury, by the scholar officials. They will give you a new name, an unofficial title spoken in hushed, hateful whispers. Ayuki Onsui, the 9,000-year-old. This title is a piece of exquisite political theater. Only the emperor can be hailed as Wansui, 10,000 years, wishing him eternal life. By calling you Ayuki Onsui, your enemies are accusing you of the ultimate crime of seeing yourself as just one step below the emperor, of usurping his authority. It is a brand of supreme arrogance, and it is meant to paint you as a tyrant in the making. But you, in your heart, embrace the title. It is a confirmation of your success. You have reached the pinnacle. You live in a luxurious private residence within the palace walls. You wear robes of the finest silk, embroidered with patterns normally reserved for imperial princes. You have amassed a personal fortune through gifts and commissions that rivals the state treasury. Your adopted son, Tom, is now a high-ranking official in his own right. Your loyal deputy. Your old friend you controls the flow of goods into the capital, a source of immense wealth for your faction. You have succeeded beyond your wildest, most terrified childhood dreams. You now wield the power you once only observed. You can make or break a man's career with a single word to the emperor. An official who has been a vocal critic of eunuch influence finds his son-in-law suddenly accused of corruption and thrown into prison. A general who pays you the proper respect finds his requests for more troops and supplies quickly approved. You are the master of the subtle hint, the well-timed rumor, the conveniently lost document. A strange and often overlooked aspect of the power held by top eunuchs was their control over the secret police. Like the Ming dynasty's infamous Eastern Depot Dongcheng, this was a eunuch-run intelligence and security agency with the power to arrest, interrogate, and punish officials without going through the normal judicial process. It was, in effect, a state within a state, a tool of terror designed to bypass the scholar official bureaucracy and enforce the emperor's or the chief eunuch's will directly. As chief eunuch, you now command this apparatus. You have the power of life and death. Historians have long debated the psychology of the eunuch dictator. What drives a man like you, who has achieved such heights, to become so ruthless? The traditional Confucian explanation is simple: you are inherently evil. Your mutilated body producing a mutilated soul. They would argue that because you have no family, no sons to build a legacy for, you have no stake in the long-term health of the dynasty. Your only motive is to accumulate as much personal wealth and power as possible in your own lifetime, like a parasite sucking the host dry. A more modern psychological view might suggest a different cause: profound, unhealed trauma. Your entire life has been built on a foundation of pain, loss, and humiliation. You were brutalized as a child, stripped of your identity, and forced to live in a state of constant fear. Now that you have power, you are driven by a desperate need to control your environment, to ensure that no one can ever hurt you again. Your cruelty is not a product of inherent evil, but of a deep-seated terror. You trust no one, so you seek to control everyone. You see the fear in the eyes of the mandarins who bow to you, the same men who once looked at you with such contempt. It gives you a bitter, satisfying pleasure. You have beaten them at their own game. They studied the art of governance in books. You studied the art of power in the corridors of survival. But your golden age is a precarious one. Your power is entirely dependent on one aging man. The emperor's health is failing. The crown prince, his son, is a very different man. He is stern, traditional, and has spent his entire life being tutored by the very scholar officials who despise you. You have seen the way he looks at you, a cold, quiet hatred that promises a future reckoning. You are living on borrowed time. At the peak of a mountain on a volcano that is beginning to rumble, you have everything you ever wanted: wealth, power, security, but you are not safe. The higher you climb, the further you have to fall. And you know, in the quiet moments late at night, that the fall is coming. You are the 9,000-year-old, a titan of the court. You have more wealth than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. Your private residence is a palace within the palace, filled with priceless art, rare jade, and furniture made from fragrant tropical hardwoods. You have an army of servants, and even high-ranking officials bow when you pass. You have achieved the pinnacle of power, and you are desperately, profoundly empty. The wealth, the influence, the fear you inspire, none of it can fill the cavernous void within you. This void was carved out of you in a dusty room all those years ago, and it has only grown larger with time. You have spent your entire life pursuing power as a shield, but now that you have it, you find that it is a cold and heavy thing. It protects you from your enemies, but it also isolates you completely. And so, you begin to try and fill the void with things. You become a voracious, almost pathological, collector. Your quest for wealth is no longer about security, it's about acquisition. It's a distraction, a way to quiet the screaming in your own mind. You send agents across the empire and beyond to procure treasures for you. You want the rarest porcelain from Jingdiken, the most intricate silks from Suzhou, the finest pearls from the southern seas. Your obsession becomes legendary. You hear of a scholar who owns a set of ancient bronze bells from the Zhou dynasty. You offer to buy them. He refuses, citing their ancestral importance. A week later, the scholar is accused of tax evasion. His property is confiscated by the state, and the bronze bells find their way into your collection. You didn't even have to give the order directly. A subordinate, eager to please you, knew what to do. This insatiable greed is one of the most common accusations leveled against powerful eunuchs in historical texts. They are almost always portrayed as fantastically corrupt, using their position to extort money and seize property. A particularly bizarre, untelling detail from the histories of several dynasties is the eunuch's obsession with land. Why would a man with no heirs be so desperate to acquire vast agricultural estates? It seems illogical. But from a psychological perspective, it makes a strange kind of sense. Land is permanent. It is real. It is tied to the earth. For you, a man whose very identity is fluid and unnatural, whose power is dependent on the whim of a single person, owning land might have been a way to feel grounded, to earn a piece of wholeness that you were otherwise denied. It was something tangible to hold on to in a life built on shadows and whispers. The debate among historians is whether this corruption was a personal fading or a systemic one. Did the system create this behavior? An argument can be made that since a eunuch could not build a traditional family legacy, the only legacy he could leave was a material one. His descendants were his adopted sons and his faction, and he needed immense wealth to provide for them and ensure their loyalty after his death. His corruption, in this light, was a twisted form of paternal provision. Your desires grow more eccentric. You decide to build a magnificent garden next to your residence, a private paradise to rival the emperor's own. You want rare, twisted pines from a sacred mountain, exotic fish for your ponds that have to be transported thousands of miles in special jars, and fantastically shaped rocks that cost more than a village's entire tax revenue for a year. The project is a black hole for money and resources. The scholar officials are aghast, writing secret memorials to the throne condemning your extravagance and the burden it places on the people. But the emperor, old and sick and reliant on you for everything, waves their complaints away. You spend hours in your new garden. You sit by your pond, watching your impossibly expensive fish swim in lazy circles. You are surrounded by a beauty so perfect it is sterile, and you feel nothing. The emptiness remains. The things you own have begun to own you. The more you acquire, the more you need to acquire. It is a hunger that cannot be sated. Your old friend Yu, now a wealthy and powerful man in his own right, comes to visit you in your garden. He has aged. The easy companionship you once shared has been replaced by the formal, cautious respect one powerful man shows another. He looks at the garden, at the opulence, and then he looks at you. Are you happy? Wei Jinny asks, using your old name, a name no one else dares to use. The question hangs in the air. Happy, the concept is so foreign it's like a word from another language. You think of the boy you were, lying on a straw mat, hungry but whole. You think of the quiet comfort of your early Duis high partnership with Liu, when all you had was each other. You have traded all of that for this, for a garden of silent stones and a palace full of fear. I have what I need. You reply. Your voice flat. It's a lie, and you both know it. The void inside you is not a lack of things, it is a lack of self, and you are beginning to suspect that there is not enough gold in the world to fill it. The power you have amassed is not a shield, it is a cage. One you have built for yourself, far more opulent than the one you entered as a boy, but just as inescapable. The end comes, as you always knew it would, with a death, not your own, but the one that seals your fate. The old emperor, your protector, your patron, the source of all your power, finally succumbs to his long illness. The great bell of the palace tolls, its deep, mournful sound rolling over the golden roofs of the forbidden city. For the empire, it marks the end of an era. For you, it is the sound of a guillotine being released. The moment the emperor's last breath fades, the palace transforms. It's a silent, bloodless coup. The air, which moments before was thick with the scent of incense and medicine, now crackles with a new, dangerous energy. The guards at your residence are quietly doubled. They are no longer there for your protection, they are there for your imprisonment. Your vast network of spies and informants suddenly goes silent. The lines of communication you spent a lifetime building are cut, one by one. The crown prince, now the new emperor, moves with a speed and ruthlessness that surprises you. He has been planning this for years. His tutors, the scholar officials you so despised, have prepared him for this moment. They have a litany of your crimes, a meticulously documented list of your corruption, your extravagance, and your abuses of power. Your adopted son, Tom, is arrested. Your old friend, Liu, is stripped of his titles and his wealth confiscated. Your entire faction, the powerful machine you built over decades, is dismantled in a matter of hours. You are utterly, completely alone, just as you were when you first arrived. You are confined to your luxurious residence, which now feels like a tomb. You sit in your perfect garden, surrounded by your priceless treasures, and you wait. You know they are coming for you. The only question is how it will end. This pattern, the fall of a powerful eunuch immediately following the death of his patron emperor, is a classic trope in Chinese history. It happened time and time again. The eunuch's power was so personal, so tied to one individual, that it had no institutional legitimacy. It was a bubble, and the new emperor's first act was almost always to burst it. This served two purposes. It pleased the scholar official bureaucracy, securing their loyalty, and it allowed the new regime to confiscate the fallen eunuch's vast, ill-gotten wealth to fill the state coffers. The eunuch was the ultimate political scapegoat, a figure whose rise and fall was a ritualized part of the dynastic cycle. Historians debate whether any of these powerful eunuchs ever truly believed they could survive a transition of power. Were they blinded by their own arrogance, or did they know their downfall was inevitable and simply tried to amass as much wealth and enjoy as much power as they could in the time they had? It's a question of psychology. Perhaps after years of wielding absolute power, you begin to believe you are invincible. Or perhaps you are a fatalist, keenly aware that you are just one player in a game whose rules you cannot change, and you are simply playing your hand until the bitter end. A delegation arrives. It is led by the new head of the Grand Secretariat, a man whose father you once had imprisoned. His face is a mask of grim, triumphant satisfaction. He unrolls a scroll, the new emperor's first official edict. He reads out the charges against you: corruption, treason, usurping imperial authority, befouling the court. The list is long. You are given a choice. You can face a public trial and a slow, humiliating execution, or you can be granted the privilege of committing suicide. You are to be given a silken white cord. This is the final, merciful act reserved for high-ranking officials who have disgraced themselves. It allows you to die with a final, tiny shred of dignity, your body remaining whole. You look at the man, at the undisguised hatred in his eyes. There is no room for negotiation. There is no hope of appeal. The game is over. You think about your life, the muddy village, the Naifar's room, the years of silent servitude, the first taste of power, the loyalty to Lady May, the golden age of the 9,000-year-old, the emptiness of your garden. It all flashes before your eyes, the long, strange, and painful journey that has led you to this single moment. There's a strange legend, a piece of historical apocrypha, that some powerful eunuchs on the eve of their downfall would desperately try to reverse their condition. They would seek out alchemists and mystics, hoping for a magical potion that could regrow what they had lost, believing that, if they could just become a whole man again, they might be saved. It's almost certainly untrue. But it speaks to the deep psychological desperation, the desire to undo the foundational choice that had led them to this precipice. You do not beg. You do not plead. You have lived by the rules of this savage game, and you will die by them. With a calm you did not know you possessed, you accept the edict. You choose the silken cord. You have played your hand. The house is won. Your entire world, the empire you thought you controlled, has collapsed like a house of cards. The gamble you made as a terrified, hungry child has finally come due. While you await your fate in a gilded cage of your own making, life goes on for the thousands of other eunuchs who never reached such dizzying heights. What becomes of them? The rank and file, the men who spent their entire lives sweeping courtyards, carrying trays, and guarding doors. Their story is rarely told, for history remembers the monsters and the kings, not the quiet, unremarkable majority. Theirs is not a story of a dramatic fall, but of a slow, quiet fading. Let's imagine you are not Wei Jin, the 9,000-year-old. Instead, you are Chen, a man of 60. You entered the palace as a boy, just like Wei Jin did. You endured the same trauma, the same brutal training. But you were not as clever, not as ambitious, not as lucky. You never caught the eye of a powerful consort. You never gained the trust of an emperor. You have spent 50 years performing the same set of tasks. For the last 2 decades, you have been the keeper of the robes for a minor, long-forgotten imperial uncle. Your life has been one of quiet, monotonous servitude. You wake, you work, you sleep. You have a small room you share with another aging eunuch. You have your duous high partner, a friendship of quiet habit more than active companionship. You have saved a little money, but not much. You have no power, no influence. You are part of the scenery, a ghost in the machine. Now you are old. Your back aches constantly. Your eyesight is failing. You move more slowly. Your shuffling gait more pronounced. You are no longer useful. The young, strong boys who arrive every year can do your job faster and better. You begin to feel a new kind of fear, not of execution, but of obsolescence. What happens to a tool when it is no longer sharp? For most of history, the fate of an old, infirm eunuch was grim. There was no formal retirement plan, no pension. If you had been fortunate enough to have a powerful adoptive son, he would be expected to care for you. But you, Chen, never managed to cultivate such a relationship. You have no one. In some dynasties, elderly eunuchs were simply allowed to remain in the palace, performing ever lighter duties until they died. They would be moved to less desirable quarters, given smaller rations, and gradually forgotten, dying quietly in some forgotten corner of the vast city. A more poignant, and lesser known, outcome was being sent to guard an imperial tomb. The mausoleums of past emperors, located outside the capital, were vast complexes that needed a permanent staff of caretakers. Sending an old eunuch there was seen as a final act of service. It was a kind of exile. You would live out your remaining years in a place of profound silence and memory. Your only companions the ghosts of the dead and the other old men sent there to fade away. The work was like sweeping leaves, burning incense, but the isolation was absolute. It was a gentle, melancholic end, a slow descent into irrelevance. This is a point where historical records are particularly sparse and subject to debate. The lives of unimportant people are rarely documented. Historians have to piece together the reality from government budget records which might list allocations for tomb guardians, the occasional poem about the loneliness of an imperial necropolis, or archaeological evidence from the small villages that sometimes grew up around these tomb complexes. It's a history built from whispers and footnotes. Eunuchs are luckier than most. During the later dynasties, like the Ming and Qing, the eunuch community developed a more formalized system for caring for their own. Wealthy, powerful eunuchs would endow special temples or retirement homes specifically for their aging, indigent brothers. One day, you are summoned. You are told that your service is complete. You are to be retired. You pack your few belongings: a spare robe, a chipped teacup, a small string of worn prayer beads. You are taken by a cart, not to a desolate tomb, but to a temple on the outskirts of the capital. The temple is called the Temple of Enduring Spring, or some other poetic, hopeful name. It is funded by the estate of a long-dead, powerful eunuch, perhaps a man like Wei Jin. Here, you find hundreds of men just like you. They are old, grey-haired, and stooped. They spend their days chanting Buddhist sutras, tending a small vegetable garden, and drinking tea in the sun. The atmosphere is one of peaceful, communal resignation. The fierce ambitions and terrifying pressures of the Forbidden City are a distant memory. The conversations are no longer about who is in favor and who is out, but about the weather, the quality of the cabbage, and memories of home provinces they haven't seen in half a century. It is here, in this quiet sanctuary, that the empty slave eunuchs, as they were sometimes called, could find a measure of peace. They were among their own kind. They did not have to hide their physical ailments or the quiet shame of their condition. There was a shared understanding, a collective bond forged by a lifetime of shared trauma. But even in this peaceful setting, one final anxiety remains, the one that has haunted you your entire life. You are nearing the end, and you need to ensure you can be buried as a whole man. The final chapter of your life will be dedicated to reclaiming the one thing that truly belongs to your bow. You are now living in the Temple of Enduring Spring, your final home. The days bleed into one another in a gentle, monotonous rhythm of chanting, gardening, and sleeping. The manicured gardens of the Forbidden City, with their oppressive beauty, are replaced by a simple, dusty courtyard with a few old pine trees. The perfumed air of the harem is gone, replaced by the clean, earthy smell of incense and vegetable stew. For the first time in your life, the constant, low-level fear that has been your companion for 50 years begins to recede. You are no longer under anyone's direct command. You are, in a strange and limited way, free. Life in the eunuch retirement temple is a communal existence. You live in a shared dormitory, sleeping on a long cane platform, just as you did when you were a novice. But the atmosphere is entirely different. The vicious competition of the barracks is replaced by a quiet, weary camaraderie. You are all survivors of the same shipwreck, washed up on the same lonely shore. You sit with other old men you knew by sight for decades in the palace but never truly spoke to. And now, you talk, you share stories. Not of the grand political intrigues, those secrets are kept even here, but of the small, human details of your long lives. One man remembers the taste of the persimmons from his home village in Shandong, Another hums a lullaby his mother used to sing in Hebe. You discover that a man you always knew as Old Wang from the laundry service was born only a few miles from your own village. You talk for hours about the rivers and hills of a home you can barely remember, to ghosts trying to reconstruct a shared world. This existence, while peaceful, is also a slow preparation for death. The main activity in the temple is religious. You and the other residents spend hours each day chanting sutras, primarily from Pure Land Buddhism. This school of thought offers a comforting promise. By devoutly chanting the name of the immutable Buddha, one can be reborn in his Western paradise, a realm of bliss and peace, for men whose earthly lives were defined by suffering and incompleteness. The idea of a perfect, peaceful afterlife was a powerful solace. A fascinating and poignant detail of these eunuch temples is that they often became museums of a sort. Some eunuchs, upon retirement, would bring with them a small, treasured object from their time in service, a silk pouch gifted by a kind consort, a jade tobal from a favorite master, a beautifully crafted cricket cage. These objects, remnants of a life of immense wealth and power existing alongside profound personal poverty, would be cared for and displayed. The temple became a repository of collective memory for a community whose history was never formally written. The administration of the temple is handled by the eunuchs themselves, usually a younger, still able-bodied eunuch who has been assigned the role. He manages the temple's endowment, buys supplies, and, most importantly, acts as the liaison with the palace administration. This connection is vital, for it is the key to resolving the final, great anxiety of every resident's life. As you feel your own life drawing to a close, your focus narrows to a single, all-consuming goal. It is the same goal that preoccupies every man in this temple, the subject of hushed, anxious conversations. You must get your bow back. You must reclaim that small, sealed jar that has been sitting on a dusty shelf for over half a century. The process is bureaucratic and, for you, fraught with peril. You do not have the clout of a Wei Jin, who could have simply demanded his treasure. You are a nobody. You must make a formal application. The temple administrator helps you draft the letter. It is a humble, pleading document, attesting to your long and loyal service and begging the palace for the return of your property so that you may die in peace and return to the ancestors' hall. This is where the debate among historians about the bow comes into sharp focus. Was its return an automatic right? Or was it a final to love control? The evidence suggests it could be both. For most low-ranking eunuchs who served without incident, the process was a formality. But if you had a black mark on your record, if you had been punished for laziness or insubordination decades ago, your request could be denied. The palace could hold your immortal soul hostage for a minor infraction committed in your youth. You give your small life savings to the temple administrator. A portion of it will be used as a gratuity, a bribe for the clerks in the palace storage office to ensure your application is found and processed smoothly. Then, you wait. It is a torment worse than any you experienced in the palace. Every day, you watch the temple gate, hoping to see the cart from the palace. You have nightmares of your jar being lost, broken, or misidentified. To die without it would mean that your entire life, your entire sacrifice, was for nothing. You would be a broken thing for all eternity. Finally, one afternoon, the cart arrives. The administrator brings a small, dusty, sealed jar to you. Your name and date of entry are written on a faded paper label, the ink barely legible. Your hands tremble as you take it. It feels impossibly heavy. You hold in your hands the physical proof of your life's great wound, the key to your soul's salvation. You hold it to your chest, the weight of profound, complicated relief washing over you. You have it. Now, you are ready. Now, you can be whole. You hold the earthen jar in your lap. It is cool to the touch, and surprisingly heavy, not with physical weight, but with the weight of a lifetime. This is your bow, your treasure, the alpha and omega of your existence in this world. You run a trembling finger over the dusty, sealed lid. Inside this container is a shriveled, unrecognizable piece of you, a relic from a boy who ceased to exist more than 50 years ago. And yet, possessing it now, in the twilight of your life, feels like the only victory that has ever mattered. The final days in the Temple of Enduring Spring are a strange mixture of peace and ritual. Now that you have been reunited with your Bao, a profound calm settles over you. The central anxiety of your life has been resolved. You are no longer just waiting to die, you are preparing for your final journey. A journey you can now undertake with a sense of completeness. Your fellow residents, the other old eunuchs, understand the significance of this moment. They treat you with a new level of quiet respect. You have successfully navigated the final bureaucratic hurdle. You have secured your peace in the afterlife. They help you with your daily needs, bringing you a cup of warm tea or an extra blanket, knowing that you will do the same for them when their time comes. This final chapter of a eunuch's life is something the grand historical narratives rarely touch upon. The focus is always on their political machinations or their dramatic falls from grace. But this quiet, human desire for a good death, a death that was spiritually and physically whole, was perhaps the most fundamental driver of their existence. You begin to make your final arrangements. The most important of these is the preparation of your coffin. The coffin is simple, made of cheap wood, but its contents are what matter. You instruct the temple attendants exactly how the bao is to be placed. It is not to be simply tossed in. It must be positioned correctly on your body, often placed between the legs, a symbolic rejoining of what was severed. This act was of supreme importance, a ritual meant to reverse the mutilation in the spiritual realm, making you a complete man again in the eyes of the gods and your ancestors. A fascinating and debated question among historians and anthropologists is the origin of this belief. Was it an ancient tradition, or a custom that developed specifically within the eunuch community as a psychological coping mechanism? Some scholars suggest that the practice was actively encouraged by the state by making the bao the key to a peaceful afterlife. The palace ensured a powerful to love lifelong control over its eunuch population. It was a brilliant piece of psychological engineering. Make the symbol of your enslavement the key to your salvation, and you will never rebel. You also prepare your grave clothes, a simple set of robes. If you had any remaining money, you might use it to purchase a small plot in the temple's cemetery, a patch of land filled with the unmarked or simply marked graves of your predecessors. As you lie on your mat, the world outside fades away. Your thoughts turn inward. Do you feel regret? Do you look back on your life of service, of fear, of loneliness, and wish you had made a different choice? Or do you feel a strange sense of pride you survived? You endured a life that would have broken most people. You entered the most powerful place on earth, a place of legend, and you walked its corridors for half a century. You saw things that no ordinary person could ever imagine. Perhaps you think of your family, of the mother and father whose faces are now just blurry, faded portraits in your mind. Was their sacrifice of you worth it? Did the small amounts of money you managed to send home make a difference? Did they die peacefully? You will never know. You are the end of your line, a branch that will grow no further. You think of Wei Jin, the great and terrible 9,000-year-old, whose spectacular fall was the talk of the palace when you were a middle-aged man. You both started in the same place, two terrified boys on a dusty cart. Your paths diverged so dramatically. He chose the path of fire and ambition, and was consumed by it. You chose the path of water and endurance, and you have trickled down to this quiet, peaceful end. Who made the better bargain? It's a question with no answer. The day comes when you do not wake up for morning chants. You pass away quietly in your sleep, the precious jar held tightly to your chest. Your brothers in the temple find you. There is no great mourning, no weeping. There is only a quiet, respectful acceptance. They have seen this many times. It is the fate that awaits them all. They know you have died lucky. You have died with your treasure. You have died whole. Your brothers in the temple perform the last rites. They wash your frail, old body with care and dress you in your chosen grave clothes. They handle your body with a tenderness you have not felt since you were a small child. before the knife, before the palace. This final act of intimacy is reserved for the dead. In death, you are finally allowed a gentleness that was forbidden in life. They place you in your simple wooden coffin. Then comes the most crucial moment. One of them takes your precious bow, the earthen jar you guarded so jealously in your final days. The seal is broken for the first and only time since it was made. What is inside is barely recognizable, a testament to the passage of decades. It doesn't matter. The contents are carefully placed in a small silk pouch, and this pouch is laid upon your body, in its rightful place. The ritual is complete. You are symbolically whole again. The coffin lid is closed. Your funeral is a simple affair. There are no weeping family members, no sons or daughters to carry on your memory. Your only mourners are the other old eunuchs, men who share your fate. Their faces impassive but their hearts understanding. They chant the sutras for the dead. They're ready. High-pitched voices rising and falling in the temple courtyard, a sound that has echoed to the corridors of your entire life. It is a lonely, haunting chorus for a lonely life. Your coffin is carried to the temple cemetery, a small plot of land behind the main hall. The graves are simple mounds of earth, many marked only by a plain stone or a wooden tablet. Your name is written on one chen, your palace name. Your birth name has been forgotten by everyone, including, perhaps, yourself. There is no mention of your deeds, your service, your long years of silent endurance. There is no epitaph. You were a servant, a tool, and now you are being discarded. Your coffin is lowered into the earth, as the first shiver left you airless of dirt land on the lid. It marks the end of your story. You are one of the lucky ones. You died in peace, were cared for by your own kind, and were buried complete. But what of Wei Jin? The 9,000-year-old, his end is far different. After he accepts the silken white cord, he is left alone in his magnificent, silent residence. He writes a final letter, a confession and a plea for the emperor to spare his family, his adopted son Tom and his old friend Yu. It is a futile gesture, but a human one. Then, he performs the act. His death is solitary, a quiet, ignominious end in a room filled with treasures that can do nothing for him now. His funeral is a state-managed affair. He is not granted the dignity of a proper burial. As a traitor, his crimes are deemed too great. What happens to his bow? This is a point of grim historical speculation. The state could have destroyed it, condemning his spirit to eternal wandering, the ultimate post-mortem punishment. Or, in an act of supreme irony, they might have buried it with him, but in a way that mocked his desire for wholeness, ensuring his disgrace followed him into the next world. The official histories, written by his enemies, simply record his death and the list of his crimes. The personal, spiritual fate of the man is a detail they gleefully omit. So 2 lives, 2 eunuchs, 2 fates. One a spectacular flame that lit up the empire and then was snuffed out, leaving behind a cautionary tale of ambition and corruption. The other, a tiny, flickering candle that burned for a long time in a forgotten corner, quietly going out, leaving behind almost no trace at all. Which story is the real story of the palace eunuch? Both are. The history of the eunuchs is a history of these extremes and everything in between. It is a story of immense power and profound powerlessness. It is a story of fabulous wealth and grinding poverty. It is a story of ruthless ambition and quiet, desperate loneliness. The scholar officials who wrote the histories would have you remember only the way J ends. They needed a villain, a scapegoat to explain the failings of a dynasty. The evil, scheming eunuch was a perfect character for this role, and so, the quiet, suffering majority, the Chinese of the world, were erased. Their stories, their humanity, their small acts of kindness and their long years of endurance were buried along with their nameless bodies. The academic debate continues to this day. Are we to view eunuchs as a corrupting political force, a third gender with a unique social role, or as a group of systematically abused and traumatized individuals? The answer is likely all of the above. They were not a monolith. They were thousands of individual men, each with his own story, his own fears, and his own way of navigating an impossibly difficult life. They were victims who, in some cases, became victimizers. They were broken men who sought power to protect themselves, and in doing so, sometimes broke the world around them. Theirs is a story without easy heroes or villains, a long, complex, and ultimately tragic chapter in the great, messy book of human history. And now, the story is over. The great vermilion gates of the Forbidden City swing shut, the heavy, groaning sound fading into the quiet of the night. The lanterns that once lit your path are extinguished one by one, leaving only memory and shadow. The voices of emperors and concubines, of powerful eunuchs and forgotten servants, all dissolve into the soft hum of the fan in your room. The past recedes, becoming as distant and hazy as a dream you are already starting to forget. Feel the weight of the day lift from your shoulders, like a heavy silk robe being gently removed. The tension in your mind can finally release its grip. The stories are told, the ghosts are laid to rest, and there is nothing left for you to do now but drift. Let the gentle current of sleep carry you away from these ancient corridors of power and pain. Float now, on a quiet, dark river, towards a place of deep and dreamless rest. Your journey for tonight is complete. You are safe, you are born, and it is time to sleep. To sleep. To sleep. The end of the article. Good night.